Ladies were talking about how their moms worked in the factories and that the inhalation was an issue because of all the dust, and that some of them actually developed disease like lung cancer or lung issues because of it.
It all depends back then what they were working on and what type fabrics or mainly a lot of them wasn't with clothing per se. Some of the plastic places had problems that way and all that. Even though it doesn't sound that way, the record companies, there was three or four making records or what have you. In fact, they had a major problem there and all that. Then they even had a chemical spill. You get down to White Horse Pike, Route 30 going west. Do you know where Angkor is?
Yeah.
Okay, when you go over, there's a light there and all that. There's a bridge there like, okay, there's a light there. You go over that light. If you look to the left, you're going to see maybe 3 or 4 acres of woods or more that are dead. That is a doornail.
And that was from the chemical spill from that record company.
Right. There was a record company up the road and stuff.
So were there safeguards put in place?
I mean, they met whatever OSHA requirements were at the time, but they're not as sophisticated as they were, as they are today.
Yeah.
So basically, people weren't really thinking of emissions and all that kind of stuff back then. It wasn't of the time.
Yeah, right, because you met all conditions. We had air conditioning, and you would change your. That's what I said. That's why you had to clean as best you could. Oh, I think we had one of the cleanest shops in the whole area.
We did.
Or none.
Right. Let's switch over to your mother-in-law.
Right.
So you said she took care of all the paperwork and she took care of the salaries and that type of thing.
Right.
What else? What was her?
What else? If there was anybody missing, if a girl on the line needed a bundle, she'd grab that bundle and bring it over there. If that floor boy didn't come in, she worked that floor.
Right. She worked unbelievably.
Yeah. Made no difference. And make sure the office got done also.
Right. You remember all the orders coming in from New York, the payroll, running of the books, it's all the forecasting, getting orders in, going up to New York. She used to, as a child, I used to go to New York with her because they didn't want her going to New York City by herself. So here I'd be this 10-year-old. So the 10-year-old was supposed to be the security for grandmom in New York City. But yeah, we used to go to New York all the time. And she had to meet with the buyers up there, see what the styles were coming in.
They wanted, and
negotiate price.
Her, and she knew how to put that garment together. She priced those garments out. If you go up before the season started, and they would show you this jacket, that jacket, your jacket, and you say, well, this jacket here, we can make the way you want it there. The labor will be $5.75. Okay, that would be $6 1/4. And then they would talk about what happens. She said, and negotiate that price and all. Hey, no, we need that. If we can't get that, then we can't make that jacket for you. And then you would negotiate it out. Then once you got set in that price, you got the season. Now you better make that jacket.
Yeah.
They don't want no beans.
Right.
So.
Right.
And she did all that there. She priced out.
I remember sitting in boardrooms like this with her. I was a 10-year-old little kid, and she used to tell me, "Be quiet." And boy, I learned. I mean, you would see that kind of negotiation back and forth, the price of this and that. Oh yeah, she did all that kind of stuff. She did, and like you said, even being on top of everything on the floor, hiring, all the human resources. Keep track of your shipping. How much you shipped out every night.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Think about all these people are getting paid piecework, so you have to check all that for their payroll and everything. You have time cards, people punched in, they punched out. Was that all right?
Yeah, because being paid piecework, you did 50 garments. Say there was 100 in the lot. You might have did 30. She might have did 30. That's 60. She should only be left 40 for me. But
if you're counting,
I'm counting. I could have put in 50, 55. Okay. Well, there's something wrong here. Either you made a mistake counting here, or what have you. How come they made 30 and 30? It should only be 40. There's no way you made 50. And you balance out
Think
every.
about it. That's almost 300
Yeah,
employees.
yeah, you would have to balance out every lot, every.
And this
that
is
lot.
prior to computers.
Yeah.
There's no,
Oh, yeah,
there's no Excel spreadsheet, this is prior to computers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was all done on.
Right, but she was a
before.
really intelligent woman, very, very intelligent woman. She just
kept track of all that.
figures in her head. I mean, you could just give her numbers and
Now, we had a secretary, or a bookkeeper that worked in the office also. I mean, there was a lot. You had to check out every lot, and you had to balance them all out and all that. There was a lot of work to be done in that office. But she would come out on the floor, and she would grab a jacket herself and check it out, make sure everything was fine. Or she'd go down the first floor and see what the examiners were doing and look at a few coats. Oh, wait, what are you looking at? This isn't right here. Okay? And then come back up and what happened.
So before your father-in-law passed away, did he take care of that, or was
Yeah,
was
he
it
was on the
always
floor.
her?
Right.
He was,
Yeah.
he did like more of the office stuff.
No.
he was a floor, but she always was
Yeah,
the
she-
office.
yeah,
so, yeah.
she-
That's so
ran the
interesting
whole office.
because you don't usually hear of women in such high positions.
Yeah, she ran that whole office, our factory. She negotiated all the prices, all that. Now, my father did nothing but on the floor, mainly, believe it or not, the first floor, because he was a presser and what have you. And I'll tell you what, and you had to be able to figure out a lot of stuff. In that cutting room, you had to be careful with those patterns. You had to figure out how many plies you needed to get so many coats and what have you. And sometimes it wasn't just an even lay. You lay so many, they wanted so many 14s, so the 14s and 16s would be together. You would have to split that pattern just to get the 14. So you may have 100 ply for the 14s, and then you had a separate pattern for the 16. Maybe you only needed 50 or whatever. So you had to break that all down.
Right.
And you had to make sure they got ticketed right, that they didn't foul up or they didn't flip a bundle and ticket from the other side. Or oh yeah, no. You could have a major problem on your hands.
And the factory always closed down. Like back then, it wasn't vacate. They got 2 weeks vacation a year. It always shut down the week between Christmas and New Year's, and always the first week of 4th of July. Whatever 4th of July fell, the factory was always closed that week and stuff. So that was the workers' vacation. That was always that. And on the 16th of July, you always worked a half a day.
Everybody says that.
Half a day. This town, nobody can believe it. That feast day.
Basically, you almost had the whole day off because back then they used to bring the bands around and what have you. So we would only be here till 1 o'clock or so. The bands would come here in the morning. They'd play for the other ladies and this, that, and the other. And
It was like a party day.
Yeah.
You would be, nothing really. It wasn't, it was a great day.
On the 16th of July.
Yeah, 16th of July. This town, it's just amazing to me now. Like everything was shut down by the afternoon. The morning, everybody was just, they were all the factory workers. So everybody left then to go to the feast, and it was really great. We used to have the trucks pull up for lunch and the coffee break.
Right, yeah.
So at 10 o'clock was the coffee break.
Right.
10 o'clock with coffee break. And there usually would be trucks outside here so they could just walk outside and get their coffee. And they had like Danishes and all this kind of stuff.
I've heard about the bell too. At 12 o'clock, a bell rang.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone, that was
Yeah,
lunchtime.
right.
Yep.
You know, it was lunchtime.
And everybody was back at 1 o'clock,
And
12 to
then
1.
around 2:30, there was another afternoon break.
And I remember that because I worked here as a kid. And
You did?
older, as a teenager, yeah. Once I got to be old enough, I worked. And my job was always, whoever called out, that was my job of the day. And I used to come in the summertime and be like, all right, who called out? And it wouldn't be so bad if someone I knew, but sometimes I was like learning, like making the buttons. That was hard and stuff. And I'd be like, oh, I used to go home. But it was really a great
that's
experience.
their skill set. That's their...
But I had to learn in a day, and now that has, in my own life and career, that has really served me well because I had to be very adaptable, learn quickly, and so whenever I came in, my dad would say, all right, here, and one of the ladies would say, all right, this is what you got to do today, and I had to learn that job for the day. So mostly it was on the bottom floor. I examined. I used to press the interfaces.
The interfaces on the
Did a few times the buttons.
Yeah.
I never really actually used the machines on the second floor. That I really didn't do any of the machines.
that you have to
turn the collars.
turn collars.
Turn
what
collar.
they call, the sewers on the second floor. it took a little time to get that.
Right, that you weren't gonna
sure,
learn in
yeah.
a day.
You just didn't sit down and the machine
Right.
start sewing.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
But all the floor work kind of things, yeah, for the summer, I used to do all that. So, and we were always here, we were always kids, you know, even, because down the street was the elementary school. So after school, we used to walk here, you know,
Yeah.
and, you know, my dad was here, my grandma was here. I have a younger brother, and he was just adorable. And when he would walk in the factory, all the ladies, oh, little David's here, little David's here, everybody needs little David. So we kind of, really was a very family feel here. I mean, it was family run, we knew everybody in the
Local
factory,
people,
you know.
How many of the ladies do you guys still see or keep in touch with?
Well, a lot of them have passed away. Now they you know, aged and passed away. I mean, if you bang into them,
Yeah.
whatever, but they're so elderly, they're not really out
I
and
don't know
about.
what
You know?
happened. Mary Cat passed away last week.
Right.
She-
So,
last
yeah.
week, Mary
Every once in a
Cat.
while, I'll see the obit. Oh, she
Obit,
worked at
no,
National
you know.
Garment
Yeah.
Factory.
I wasn't all that old when I was here. Most of them ladies were all older than me.
Right,
And,
Right.
and I'm 78.
right, right.
So, you know,
Right, that's what I was
those
just
ladies all
thinking.
into their 80s and then some.
Most of them passed away.
Clothing industry is really, well, there's no clothing industry left. And maybe down south, I don't know, but in this area, even in Egg Harbor, there was 3 or 4 shops in Egg Harbor. Besides Pembroke was in Egg Harbor. Tony DiPaolo, he had a big factory in Vineland.
Right.
That's all gone. There's only one factory that I know is still left, and that's in Vineland. Is it Del Rossi? Yeah, Del Rossi. They make uniforms, government
Military.
military.
Uniforms.
They get military. They did that for the past 100 years that I know of. But as far as civilian type work and all, I don't think there's one around. And it's a shame, you know.
Yeah.
It was a rough years. It was a sweatshop. You see what I get for a pension every month. Right now, people think you put your gas up with a tank of gas, right? But I learned a lot, and like a lot of women said right here, we know what it is to work. And at that time, we worked, and that's all we knew. We had fun. We made friends working. We were all doing the same thing, out to make some money to live.
I'm guessing that you already know that that building where Stockton is today used to be a clothing factory.
I think that's where the idea came from. So they want to get the history of the building, and then that's it. Why don't we just get a history of all of the garment workers, you know?
I started out at 75 cents an hour. At Bell Sports, where the first place I worked, they made ladies' skirts. And I don't even think they use it now, but at the bottom of the skirt today, I don't know what goes on there now, but there was a ribbon binding.
Oh,
I don't
I
know if
remember
you're-
that, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And that's what I did. I put the ribbon
Okay.
on the bottom of the skirt.
By hand?
No, by machine.
By machine.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
It was just a regular plain machine that it had a little special foot there on the bottom of it, and
Okay.
off it went. Then I went to one of the biggest shops in town. You probably heard it was Kessler's.
Yes.
That was Hammonton Park.
Yeah.
They made full suits there. I'm sure you heard this because they were the biggest ones in town.
Right.
At that time, I guess they had probably about 500 people at that time. I worked in the coat shop for 2 years. And at that time, it was a piece of, we used to call it bridle. It was like a tape, a white tape that went on the inside before they put the lining. I'm guessing it held the front of, it was on the front of the jacket. I'm guessing it held that there. And that's where I stayed for 2 years. I went to work at Romelo's on Fairview Avenue. That was men's slacks. And I stayed there until the Japanese and Chinese imports started coming in.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah,
I was there
yeah.
quite a few years, and I worked on a big machine there. The back pockets of the men's slacks, right here,
Right.
there was a piece I used to put on, and then it was like a skinny little piece what I put on, and it would cut through the pant leg with this big machine. And I stayed there until they closed.
Wow. Do you remember when that was?
I'm guessing in the middle to late 70s.
Okay.
And it closed, and then the union, Amalgamated Union, called us all back. They were going to reopen it. We didn't get no raise, and that was a couple months later, the shop was done.
Okay. Was that the first experience with the union, or had you always worked?
When I worked at Bell Sportswear, they might have had a ladies' union then, I think we belonged to a ladies' union, but like I said, Barbara, that's 60 more years ago. And I never got any benefit from, benefit-wise. But let me tell you what I get from the amalgamated union a month. For 32 years of work, $35.18. So the longest I ever worked would probably be, the longest would be Rummelow's Slacks on Fairview Avenue, the one where they closed and they reopened and they closed.
Right.
And then I was home for I don't know how long. This is all the late 70s. And then I get a call one morning from what used to be, you've heard this phrase, the clothing factories had foremans.
Right.
And I get a call from this Ralph, who was my foreman when I worked at Romelu's. So since that shop closed, he and another foreman that ran Pino's, that was another shop, that the two of them, these two men, were going to open a little shop over here right off of 3rd Street.
Okay.
And they collected like different operators that they were familiar with.
Right.
So I went. Still working on the same machine, but then it was a small shop, and then you had to do whatever job you could do, which was fine.
Right.
Which was fine. And I lasted there probably close to 10 years, and then I decided it was time to change. We never had air conditioning. I used to come home at lunchtime and take a bath and go back.
You were
5
literally
after
sweating.
1, sweating all over again. The thread, the dust was sticking over here while you sweat. And the bottom line of the whole thing is when I went to work at Romelo's, the men's slacks on Fairview Avenue, that building was built with an air conditioner, but when I started there, the air conditioner was not working.
What we've heard is that a lot of people were Italian.
I never had a problem working with anybody in there. We always had, as a matter of fact, 2 of my best friends, when I worked with, we're still best friends.
Yeah.
I don't want this to come out wrong, but it seems like when you make a working friend, there's always a strip of jealousy there. Because, you're out to make $1, and maybe somebody's not going to make that dollar today.
With each other
but we never had a problem.
Yeah.
But I remember now these, what I call an old lady, which is probably how old I am now. As soon as you would start your job, they'd hear, "Oh, you don't make no money in this place. You can't stay. You got to go." Well, how long have you worked here? 50 years.
Was your money did it go into the household expenses? Were you paying house, or was it your money to do what you wanted?
No, what's his is mine and what mine is his. We're one.
Right, so you just pulled your expenses for the house. Okay.
And the advantage of the shop work at that time was that, the shop had seasons. Mm-hmm. So we stayed, we were off a lot in between collecting unemployment.
Oh, okay.
Which was good in its own way.
You had kids, and
right.
It was nice.
And at that time, you didn't have to pay taxes on unemployment.
Oh, okay.
But the only thing, there's the damper side of it, you never knew when you were going to get called into work, and maybe today the phone didn't ring, and then the phone rang 11:30. You want to come in this afternoon, But those things didn't happen, but it all worked. At that time, I'm sure we were all mad. Wow, we got to go in this afternoon.
So you really didn't know when you were going to work? You didn't have a set?
No. It was all according to who was supplying, who they were, who they were.
They had a big,
the supplier.
big thing come in, big order come in.
I mean, we more or less knew them when we went in there, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. We might have just worked a half a day for 3 days, and then maybe the boss would say, "Well, that's it for about a couple of weeks now," or he might say, "Well, next week a big lot is coming in." And that's just the way it was. And we used to pull tickets off, because remember, we were piecework. We used to pull little tickets off whatever we were working on. Nobody realized at that time how the foreign imports were taken over.
So that's really what happened.
That's what happened.
You were working, you had to come home, I presume, and clean the house and cook dinner. And
I used to do everything.
You had to do everything.
And run with kids for sports and whatever's involved.
Right.
Yep.
What was your work day like? How long was it?
8 to 5.
8 to 5?
8 to 5. Bell Sportswear, that was the first job back in the early 50s. Yeah, that's where I was working. I was married in 55. Yeah. I don't remember what the hours were there, but by the time we got to Ralph and Eddie's, which were the 2 bosses that opened the little shop, we would work 7 to 4, but in the summertime, we all decided we were going to go in maybe for cooler time and get out
Right.
Yeah.
So you could get out earlier.
Right,
Yeah.
like I think, and then we took a half-hour lunch.
Okay.
The bosses asked, and we said yes, because it was
It
hot.
was really hot, yeah. Okay. What was your, oh, go ahead.
No, so remember, I don't know if you remember, I was starting to tell you that, and every piece of garment you picked up had a little ticket on it,
Right.
which had a lot number on it, and an amount of each bundle. Everything was called a bundle, tied up. And then we would bring all our tickets home, and like every Sunday night, I do homework with a pencil and paper,
You'd have to add them
and
all
total up how many you did, and then Monday morning you would bring your timesheet in.
Okay. That's how you got paid for the pieces.
Yeah.
Right, that you worked on. Okay. Oh, that's cool. Wow. So did you ever, I know only two of the places were women's clothes. Did you buy any of their clothes? Did you wear their clothes? Did you think they were good? Or?
I would guess they were a little bit too expensive for me, but I do remember buying two things, and maybe one was for me when we went to Carousel Slacks, because they could have been samples, and they did make some beautiful. I used to like to wear culottes,
Yeah.
and they were winter culottes. I remember they were winter white, and they must have had a couple extra, and asked if anybody wanted to buy them.
Oh, nice.
And I think I bought my sister a pair and me a pair. Don't ask me how much they were.
Right.
I have no idea.
Probably 50 cents. Right.
And something interesting at Carousel Slacks, we used to have to call the bank every Friday to see if our check was good enough if the money was there.
Wow.
Now, Barbara, let me tell you the figure on these checks. I mean, what do you think? They were millions? It was like $50, $45, $30.
Wow. So they were really hanging by their fingernails, right? Wow. So that's why they were sending you home, and just, so really were kind of like the end of things, right?
And it was, I mean, in its own way, it was nice. That probably was that place was the smallest and probably the most comfortable. Even though I had no problem with wherever I worked. I didn't have no problem with nobody.
Right. Well, that's good. Yeah, your foremen were all.
We got our vacations and we got our holidays, and then, you know.
Paid vacation? Or?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Amalgamated Union. I don't remember. Bell Sportswear. I don't remember nothing about that, but the other three places were Amalgamated Union, which gave me my big pension of $35.18.
So how much vacation did you get? Do you remember?
Well, we ended up with it was 2 weeks for the first 2 weeks of July.
Okay.
That was all over for Amalgamated Union. And then they gave us 1 week Christmas time, which was good.
Yeah, that's
We
nice.
were home with the kids.
Yeah.
Between Christmas and New Year's. And and then the holidays, we got normal holidays, but if you didn't come in the day before, the day after, you didn't get paid.
Okay.
And you didn't get paid if you weren't working on the job, if you didn't punch a time clock.
Right.
Even though it was peace break, you still had to punch that time clock.
So, I learned that you work in a factory, right?
Yes.
Can you tell?
Newell Clothing, it was called.
Okay.
We made when I first started out, we worked on ladies' garments and ladies' suits from Leslie Flay of New York. Then after the war we had to go on army work, and I worked on army work for quite a few years. That was Mr. McKeezy, and he was a mayor of Hammonton, but he was a great boss.
So where was it located?
6th Quince and Vineland, New Jersey.
Vineland. Okay.
Vineland, yeah.
Yeah.
I traveled back and forth every day. It was exactly 9 miles there and 9 miles back.
So do you need to take the bus, or you can?
I drove, hon.
Oh, you drove.
I drove.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell me about what did the company make?
We made army work at the end, but at first, when I first started, we made ladies' suits, coats and skirts, and then we were forced to go on government work. We made army uniforms, navy uniforms, WAC uniforms, and wave uniforms, and marine uniforms. We worked for the government.
Yeah, so it's a lot of hard work, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Mr. McKeesey was our boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He owned the factory.
Oh, okay. So, do you remember how big was the factory?
Oh, it was pretty big. There were a couple hundred people there.
Wow, so 100 people. Yeah, that's the question I'm
Wasn't a hundred, hon, a couple hundred.
A couple hundred.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what was your job there? Can you describe that for me?
My wife?
So what was your job there? So what is your duty? Can you describe that for me?
We did sewing.
So.
Is that what you want to know? It was a sewing factory.
Mhm.
And everybody had their own little job. It was like piecework.
Oh. Oh, okay.
We made the army uniforms.
Yeah, yeah. So you said you make clothes, right?
Yeah.
So do you work on a machine or you have to hand sew it?
I worked on several machines, a blind stitch, a regular machine, and a knife machine. I could do a lot of little things.
Mhm.
But my main job was the blind stitch. That's when they hem sleeves and stuff. You can't see the stitches on the right side. That's why they call it a blind stitch.
Okay. So you say you work in a factory, and is it a big room for everyone or a different room for different people?
Well, most of the time it was the same people. I worked with the same people for quite a few years. But right now, there's only about 3 of us that are left. All the other has deceased, and Mr. McKeesey died too.
Oh.
And his nephew, he was the boss. Tony McKeesey. That was Mr. McKeesey's niece. He was the boss, but he just passed away last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if he has. Mr. McKeesey never had children. He just had nieces and nephews.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
But he was a wonderful boss, hon.
Mhm.
Wonderful boss. He was very considerate.
Mhm. So.
He came from Hammonton every day.
Mhm.
And his wife was named Agnes, but I don't remember her last name. But her name was Agnes.
Okay.
DCT too.
Mhm. So you say your
It was a beautiful factory, hon.
Oh, okay.
He took care of it. It was always kept nice and clean. And we worked from 8 to 5.
8 to 5?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you have to work like over hours sometimes?
Sometimes we had to work like on Saturday morning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes.
When the government worked. See, they would give you a contract, and they give you so much time to get it out. And then maybe sometimes we have to work on Saturdays so we could get it. He ordered it done by April. Well, maybe we'd have to work a little overtime to make it go in April.
Mhm. Yeah.
At the quarters, it's called the quartermaster. They're the ones in charge. Quartermasters.
Mhm.
They take care of the army work.
So it depends on how busy the factory is. So you have to stay overnight or you can go home on time, right?
Oh, no, we went home every night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We went home every night.
Mhm.
Yeah, they had a watchman.
So you don't have to stay overnight?
No, never.
Mhm. Yeah. So...
Maybe worked till 6 o'clock some nights.
Mhm.
Stayed overnight.
Mhm. So, do you need to bring any food from your home, or did the factory provide lunch or food for the employees?
I didn't quite get that.
Do you have to bring lunch to your work, or they would provide food for you guys?
We had to bring our own lunch. We brought our own lunch. But we had 9 o'clock we had a 15-minute break for a cup of coffee, but you brought that from home.
Okay.
And then we had a half-hour lunch hour.
So.
But we brought our own food from home. But next to the New Old Clothing, there was a big a restaurant called the New York Inn.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we go there and eat lunch.
Mhm.
But we had to pay for it ourselves. The only time we got anything free was at Christmas. He'd give us a Christmas party.
Oh, okay. So what kind of food do you like to bring to work?
What kind of what?
Food do you like to bring to work?
I used to mostly take sandwiches. Sometimes I would take soup and heat it on the pressure machine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were allowed to do that.
Mhm.
We didn't make a mess. We could. It was like a second home there. You could do anything you wanted as long as you did it right.
Right. Yeah. As
But
long as
you weren't sloppy or nothing.
right. Yeah. As long as you carry out your duty and work, and you can do it right.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm interested to learn about. So were all or most of the women Italian descent, or do they have any different people from different culture or racial background?
Well, we had different people. Now, I worked with a woman that she was born over in Europe, and she lived there, and a couple were born in Italy. We had different. It was mixed, and everybody got along. The only thing at the end, most of the people that I worked with were all older than me. I was the youngest, and they're all gone now. But when they gave up the factory, there was a lot of from Puerto Rico there. But I don't remember much about them. They were all nice to get along with, but that's when the factory closed up.
Okay. So you said there are people who come from different backgrounds. That most of them.
And they were all, everybody got along.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. So can you tell me how much do you earn each hour?
Well, when I first started, it was piecework. If you made 50 cents an hour, you were lucky. Then, if you worked hard, you could make more. Mm-hmm. But when I first started, it was you didn't make very much. But then after you got started and we got a lot of army work, that's when we made our money on the army work.
Mhm. So when you have the money, what would you do with the money you earn? Do you buy?
That would pay for my home living, my rent, not my rent, my electric and oil and food. Mm-hmm. And then I saved a little bit.
Yeah. Would you use the money to buy something you like?
Yes. I would say I had a pretty good life living to 90. I had a pretty good life, and I loved my job. I loved the work I did.
Mm-hmm. So, in your factory you work in, do they have a union?
Yes, we had AFL. In fact, I get a union pension every month.
Oh, okay. So, do you feel that it is helpful for workers if they join the union?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was. Yes, we got benefits. They took care of us. If you got sick, you got paid. And if you had to go to the hospital, they paid the bill. It was the Blue Cross of Philadelphia. It was very good insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started it was only $9 a month.
Oh.
But when I retired in 1982,
mm-hmm.
it was almost $100, almost $100. That's how much it went up in them years.
Yeah. So
and goodness knows how much it is now, because I don't have it no more. When you retire and you give up the job, you can only pay your benefits for a year.
Mhm. So it is improving, right?
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now they get a good pension and they get good benefits now. But there's only two factories left in Vinyl now.
Oh.
That's Giraffe and Crown Clothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's just the only two factories that is remaining,
Take
right?
army work, yes.
Oh. So, I want to know, so for the employees, are they, most of them are women or do they have men too?
Both women and men.
Oh, okay.
The men were pressers and most of the women were sewers. But there were some men that did sewing, but mostly women.
Oh, okay. So, how do you feel that the women are treated by the manager or your boss?
We had all right. I got along with everybody. We had a good crowd there, hon.
Mm-hmm.
Good crowd. We had all good bosses. They were all good bosses. That was a wonderful shop to work in.
Oh.
I never regretted it. Never.
Mm-hmm. So everyone, whether it is man or woman, they're all treated equally.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
There was no partiality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If a man did the same job as you, we got the same price on the work. It was piecework.
Mm-hmm.
Say you set sleeves, you got $10 so many you had to make. I forget now. I don't think it was 100. I think so many you had to make for the price.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, everyone is treated equally.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, it was a wonderful shop. And Mr. McKeesey was the greatest. I can't say enough for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, do you ever buy any of the company's products, like their clothes?
Well, no, we didn't because we couldn't buy army work. That went for all the service boys.
Oh, okay. So they're only for boys
Yeah.
and women.
Well, no, we made uniforms for the waves and the wax too.
Oh.
I don't think anybody was interested in buying them because they all went to the service.
Mm-hmm. So, can you share what was the hardest part of your job?
Traveling back and forth, I would say, would be the hardest. Yeah. But once you got there, it was a pleasure.
So do you mean...
if you took coffee in your thermos bottle, you could have a cup of coffee before you started. And if they started at 8 o'clock. If you got in there 7:45, you could sit and have a cup of coffee before you worked.
So the time would be the hardest thing, right? You have to get there on time.
Traveling was the hardest thing.
So how about the best part? What do you enjoy about the working in the company? What is the best part?
The best part was the sewing. I loved it always from a little girl. I loved to sew.
Yeah.
I was a little girl. I used to make my little brothers and sisters little sunsuits and stuff. I always was a sewer. But when we worked in the factory, we had electric machines. But when I was a little girl, where I had a pedal pusher, you had to push them with your feet.
Mm-hmm.
In the shop, everything was electric.
Oh, interesting.
Power. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So, you work in the company. You go there to work is because you help?
No, we had floor boys. They brought your work and took your work away.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I said. It was a real nice job.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have to work to help out your family, or you just want to go to work?
Well, I never had any, nobody but a husband to worry about, so I just loved going to work.
So you say you just want to go to work to earn a living.
Yes, yes.
So, do you think that so when you go outside to work, do you think, do you have any children when you're working?
Do I have any what?
Children.
No, I don't have no children.
Okay. So, how many years have you worked for the company again?
Close to 40 years.
40 years? Wow, so that's a
But
long
maybe
time.
about 39, but it would have been 40 years, but they closed up.
So you never change another job?
No.
So this
I helped out other shops, but New Clothing was my main shop.
So this is the only job you have ever worked?
No. Well, when I was only 18 years old, I got a job in Glassboro as a clothing. That's how I started out. And in them days, I made $14.75 a week, an hour. But that was in Glassboro. But then when I got the job at Newell Clothing, it was much better.
So you said you have been working in the company, for the company, about almost 40 years.
Yeah.
So did you get any pension when you retired?
Yes, I get a union pension.
Mm-hmm.
But no pension from Newell Clothing. We get a union pension, AFL.
Yeah. Any other benefits?
No other benefits, no. No, just the union pension. When you quit, when they retire, you lose all that.
Mm-hmm. So have you ever think that you want to do anything else for a living?
Not really, no, because I loved it, like I say, I loved the sew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I was very contented working sewing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can tell that when we discuss about the factory and your past experience, I can tell that you really enjoy it.
Yes, I really did.
And you have a good, I can say you have the best boss.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I did a lot of sewing home for people and myself. I made a lot of clothes for people, and everything in my house on my own. I made my own curtains and my own clothes and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just love to sew. I still love to sew, honey, but I can't sew now because my eyes aren't that good. And I had a heart attack about a year ago.
Oh.
That took a lot of ginger out of me.
Mhm. Yeah.
But Mr. McKeezy in that shop, I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
I never had no regrets.
Mm-hmm. So can you share? Can you tell me more about him? Besides his name and he's your boss, do you know anything about him?
Well, the only thing I really know about him, he was a good man, and he was the mayor of Hammonton at one time. But he was a great boss. You go to him, if you were short of money and you couldn't wait till payday, he would loan you money till payday.
Mm-hmm.
But he was I would say, one boss out of a million.
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah. Yeah. So, we have been...
He run a nice shop.
Mm-hmm. So, we have been discussing about the job you did in the factory. So, at the end of the workday, so you came home from work, what would you do?
Well, I come home and I have to make supper for my husband. And then sometimes I wash, sometimes I iron. It all depends.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else you enjoy to do?
Baking. I love to bake.
Yeah. Are you good at... hold on. So, are you good at baking too?
No, I don't bake no more, honey, because I can't lift very much now. I gotta be very careful around the stove. But I would love to bake, but I can't. At Christmas time, my husband I have a spare room, and he used to say, That's no spare room. That's a bakery room. I used to make about 30, 40 different kind of cookies.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what is your favorite cookies?
Oh, I used to make a cookie with a prune and nuts. I baked all kinds. I don't think I had a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Baked butter cookies, sugar cookies, chocolate cookies. I made pizzelle. I guess I'm saying it right. There's those little waffles. You know what they are?
Mm-hmm.
Pizzelle. I made them. In fact, I still got the iron to make it.
Yeah. You make my mouth water.
But I don't make them no more, though.
Yeah. I also enjoy baking too. Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you can write as many times as you want. Mr. McKeezy was one of the best. A renewal clothing, 7th and Quint. Yeah. And we had a nice, with nice people there. And he even had good secretaries. He had good secretary.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that what you want to know, hon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it closed up. The factory closed up in 1982.
1982, so it closed up.
Yeah, but he didn't own it at 82. He sold it to Mr. Diorio. But then
Did they change?
we lost the contract.
Oh.
How they closed up. But when they closed up, we were making army work. It closed up March 1982.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I've been retired ever since.
Mm. Did they sell it to? So when they close up, do they sell the property to another one?
Yeah. No, honey, I don't know. To this day, I don't know what happened to the factory. I haven't been in Vineland for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I heard, somebody from Minnesota, if you ever heard of it, he bought it to store clothing in it. He had a factory in Minnesota where he made civilian work, and he was going to sell suits and stuff there. That's what I heard, but I don't know how true that is. That's only a word of say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have some other questions I would like to know. So, do you know what country your family came from? Are they
my father was born in Alsace-Lorraine, but my real mother was born in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
And my stepmother was born in Philadelphia, but my father was born in Alsace-Lorraine, France.
Oh, so your father is from France.
So I'm French descent, but I was born in Philadelphia.
Okay. So you have lived in Philadelphia for a long time.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. So do you remember any family traditions? Do you guys have any celebration for the holidays?
Well, my real sister and I, till she passed away, we had dinner every Saturday together.
Mm-hmm.
My sister Loretta, we had dinner together with Missy. That's Melissa's mother.
Mm-hmm.
We had dinner every Saturday together, and we had every holiday together.
Yeah.
We were very close.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrate Christmas every day.
Yeah.
Now, like Good Friday's coming up.
Yeah.
We would have a fish dinner.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So, do your family still celebrate those traditions today?
Well, the rest of the family, they have a reunion about every other year.
Mm-hmm.
All the boys and girls, all the brothers and sisters. They're all half brothers and sisters. But I'm only telling you that. But when I talk to them, I don't call them half brothers. I just call them my brothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you told me that you grow up in Philadelphia. So, and your father is come from France. Did he speak French also?
Yes. When I was a little girl, I couldn't speak American. I used to speak Alsatian.
Oh.
They call it Alsatian.
this is the language, French, right? That's what they call.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you speak English and French too?
I don't know. I can't speak that anymore. After my mother died, I lived with my grandmother. Then when my father remarried, I went to live with my stepmother, and then I forgot how to say talking French.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
To this day, I only talk American, and sometimes I get confused with that.
Mhm. Yeah. So at your home when you're little, do you guys communicate in English or other English? Oh, okay.
None of them talking nowadays.
Mhm.
You know, my father's gone now about 15 years, so everybody talks in English. Because everybody was born here in America.
Mhm.
Only my father was born in our States already.
Mhm. So, I found one final question. Do you have any grandchildren?
No.
So you have a niece, Melissa, right?
Yeah, she's my precious little girl. She helps me so much. She does my shopping for me, takes me to the bank,
Yeah.
to the doctor. Yeah.
So, have you shared your experience with her about your factory, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So you talk about what your past experience and all that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to tell me about the factory and your past experience working in the factory?
Well, I think I told you everything. It was a good place to work and a good boss
Mhm.
and a good people in there. We got along real nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every once in a while we would celebrate Christmas. Well, Mr. McKeesey used to give us a Christmas party.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did he came to the party too?
Huh?
Did he came to the party too?
I didn't understand that.
So you said he gave you all the employees a party when it is Christmas time. Did he came to the party too?
Yes.
To join into the party?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I was always well liked.
Mhm.
I'm not much of a troublemaker. I always, if there's anything going wrong, I always try to make peace.
Yeah. So everyone is doing their job, right?
Yeah, everybody did their own job.
Mhm.
But there's no fighting or nothing, because you did one job and I did another and the other did another. And that way, that's how the whole suit got made.
Yeah.
Then it would go downstairs and be pressed and shipped, and then it would go out to the depot,
Mhm.
where they collected them, and then they sent them to the boys.
Yeah.
The only thing I used to say when we worked, it was blood money, because many of the boys,
Right.
they used the uniform and never came home.
Mhm.
That was my only thing that I thought about was blood money.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. You have to work hard to earn money, right?
Yes, it worked
Yeah.
very hard. It was piecework. The harder you worked, the more you made.
From one job to the other, this is what America is good for. You can do anything you want to accomplish. We are here today because we are blessed. Franca Girardi.
Whatever I say or everything you say, just the way it was. It was tough, but like you say, if you grow, you really, you never knew what did you need when you come to stranger country. For us, it really was a little different. And so we found ourselves, a little bit of despair many times. But you put everything together the way you growing at home, and then, like you say, America is really wonderful country. You can do anything you want to do, and you achieve. But you have to work very, very hard. That's it. But I do have a lot of good memory for Hammonton, a lot of good people. We got home. You know, right away. We had a lot of people from all the story we had, they got us. You know, they gave us everything we wanted. And it was a good and bad. You know, really, really, sometimes we find ourselves very, very much, you know, sick. Especially when I got my Alex. He was born, so nobody able to see it. And I saw when I share with you. When he was born, I received a letter from my mom the day after with a little babe. She put a little babe in the letter. So that was really hard, you know. She was with me, but meanwhile, I say, nobody able to see this baby. You know, it never stopped. Real tough. But life goes on, and you keep it going. So when we saw the baby, everything changed. Everything changed for the best. And then we went on and on and on. And thank God we are here and still, 50 years later. And we just made our 50th anniversary. We went back home to celebrate there and celebrate here. And it was wonderful day right now. You did a good job. Yes, again.
I just wanted to say the story that you had about going home to see Alex in your 15-minute breaks.
Oh, yes.
If you could just briefly share that.
No, the reason why when he was 9 months old, so we are living in this little apartment. A lady was living downstairs. She said, we are two women. We watch this baby. When are you going to work? I said, I have to leave it. You'll be okay. You'll be okay. So she gave me that grocery fair. I never figured out, like, oh, we have a picture of her. It was wonderful. So, but in my heart really was tough to leave it. So in my they said 15 minutes break. I used to run orchestra, pass it through Romulo factory, and run to Fairview, peek through the window, to see if he was okay. And then I ran back to the factory, the foreman never knew it, I was doing that. But then in the winter, I was in bright cheeks, for the cold. So after she say, what happened to you? Oh, I don't know. I must have did something wrong last night. But this was the honest is true. So I used to see him playing the big thing, and then I used to go back to home, I was happy. And it was worry all the time. But although she was a wonderful lady, though, really.
sew for members of the Rat Pack. And so as a result of that, she made suits for Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, Jackie Gleason, etc. And it was always very, very exciting for her. And she would come home and she'd say, oh, it's Jackie Gleason's jacket today. Boy, it took a lot of stitches. And what she would do is that she would put a little note in the inside pocket of their jackets that she made, saying that she made the jacket and she'd give her name and a contact number with hopes that someday one of them would contact her. For what reason, I don't know, because she really had no interest in show business, but she did get a call. She got a call from Jackie Gleason's secretary inviting her to this show in New York. So that was just the most rewarding experience she had the whole time she worked there. I did want to say also that she was a part-time employee, and Mr. Kessler allowed her to call the shots, make her own hours whenever she could come in and do these special suits for him. He always appreciated it. So, again, getting back to Tanya, she was marvelous. She was wonderful, and my God bless her and her family.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate for your sharing your story, because it wasn't just the story of the garment workers, but it was also the personal story of your whole family involvement in the garment history. I mean, we just found out how many members were involved, and also thank you for sharing with me about your background from Italy. Like, I learned that on her mother's side, Gertrude Crestes family is from Campobasso in Italy, and they're the Colabetta family. I don't know if you've heard of the olive oil Colabetta, but so that's where her background is. While her husband is from the from Sicily, and that's where they were. But it was a great experience, because I really appreciate learning about other immigrant experiences that are different than mine, and to see how it projects generation after generation, and to see how actually Joanna became a nurse. If you don't know, it's different than her mom. She didn't take into her footsteps, and I would like to ask her just to briefly tell me why she didn't want to go into sewing, if it's okay, and why she became a nurse. It's specifically the episode with the teacher and how the whole experience of learning how to sew with the patterns. That was really funny. If you'd like to share that.
I'll try to make it quick. I never really had any interest in sewing, because although I was in awe of all these ladies that worked with my mom, and I was in and out of the shop all the time because it was in our backyard, I've always had an interest in hands, and I have no idea why I'm interested in hands. Even till today I am. But I would look at these women of various ages, and I noticed that their hands, and if you look at mine, they're kind of like now arthritic, like my mom and all her friends. And I would look at them and I'd say to myself, I'm never, ever going to do that kind of work, because I don't want my hands to look like that. And little did I know the genetics that went along with that. I really wasn't that interested in the medical field at that time, but my father insisted that I do that, because he wanted me to take care of my mother if something happened to him. And Mr. Kessler was always very interested in the families of his employees. And one day, when I was in, I guess, my senior year of high school, he asked me what I was going to do with my life. And I said, well, I guess I'm going to be a nurse. That's what my father told me I was going to be. And so he said, are you going to be okay? Can you manage the tuition and all that goes with it? And I said, yeah, I guess I'm going to. And he said, you know what? He said, I'll give you whatever you need to get into nursing school, he said. And I realized, it's expensive, because in those days, it was very expensive then. And so he wanted to give me the money for my tuition to go. And of course I was very excited, because I was going to make life much easier for my parents as well as myself. And when I came home and told my father, although he was appreciative, became very indignant, because he was a very proud man and he didn't want anybody doing what he felt his job was. So I turned Mr. Kessler down for that generous offer. And I remember his words saying, you pay me back when and if you can pay me back, and if you can't pay me back, don't worry about it. And, that was great. But when I graduated from high school, I had to work a year for the tuition before I could go into nursing school. But just God bless Mr. Kessler.
Hammonton Park Clothes was the factory where originally your mother worked.
Yes, that was the brand name. And the nickname was Kessler Shop, because it was owned by William Kessler.
What is your earliest memory of your mother going to work?
It was difficult for me to actually classify it as being a memory, because my mother worked in such a way that my brother and I oftentimes never even realized that she did work, because she was part-time and was Mr. Kessler's hand sewer specialist. She was allowed to make her own hours. So in the morning we would get up and get dressed for school and sit down and have our breakfast, and she would get us off to school, and then she would leave to go to work for a few hours and return home at lunchtime because the school that I went to was around the corner. So we would come home for lunch, which was about an hour, and we would have lunch at home with my mother, and we would go back to work again. Go back to school, and Mom would clean up those lunch dishes as though no one was there, and she would return to the shop, and she would work there until it was time for us to come home from school, and when we come home, she would be in the house again. So oftentimes, and it did take me a long time to realize that she even worked. And that was an excellent arrangement. And because of her talent as a hand sewer specialist, she was allowed to do that. Mr. Kessler was a very generous, easygoing, wonderful person that was loved by all of his employees. As far as I know, I don't know of anyone that ever had anything negative to say about him.
So she was a hand sewer specialist.
She was a hand sewer specialist, and she made coats for famous celebrities and dignitaries.
Does this mean that she was different than other workers?
Well, yes.
In what way?
In the fact that the pants were made, of a suit, were made in the pants. They used to call it the pants shop, which was the building next door. And the jackets were made for the suits. And they didn't call it the jacket shop. They called it, they had another name for it, and I don't exactly recall what it was. But they were made there. And then, of course, when the pants were finished and the jackets were finished, they were matched with the suits. Now, they had hand sewing was a specialty. And Mom used to make stitches that were invisible.
Wow.
And by hand.
Okay.
She did not use a sewing machine. And so because of her talent, which she obtained as a very young person, because she came from Philadelphia and had to quit school when she was very young to go and help with the income in the family.
Okay.
And so she did that, and I guess, she might have been the age of a young girl in 8th grade, maybe even 7th grade, and she was no longer in school. She was working in a clothing shop in Philadelphia, and that's what she did to earn extra money for the family to survive, because my grandparents, her parents, had 6 children at the time. So she left school at a young age to help with, because of the limited income in the house. And as I said, she worked in a garment factory and became an expert in hand sewing. It started then.
Okay, so she basically started to sew. Where did she learn how to sew? At home, or she just started the job at an early age and then she learned?
I think it was never really clarified, but I think she really learned what we call OJT, which would be on-the-job training. And she did that until she got married to my dad, and that was at the age of 20. So she did that from age 13 to about 20 when she married my father, and then left Philadelphia and moved to Hammonton and spent the rest of her life here in Hammonton.
Okay, thank you. And did she started to work how did she find the job with Mr. Kessler?
Well, Mr. Kessler's, or Kessler's shop, or Hammonton Park Clothes, whichever you prefer, was actually in our backyard. And I say that only because if you went out our back door and you walked maybe 500 yards, you would come to the back door of the shop.
Easy enough?
Yeah, it certainly was easy enough, and it was very convenient, and that's how Mom had the opportunity to manipulate her hours. However, after a period of time, as I got a little older and I realized what was happening, Mom was placing some responsibilities on me. So she would work a little past the time that when we would come home from school. And let's just say, for the sake of getting some perspective here on the time frame, if we came home from school at 3 and she could work till maybe 4 or 5 o'clock. That gave her 2 more hours to earn more money.
Okay.
And that then put some responsibility on me where when I came home, if she wasn't there, first of all, I always had the option of, if something was terribly wrong, I just had to run out the back door over to the next door, and immediately whatever it may have been, it would be rectified. But it would be simple things like sweep the floor or set the table.
Okay.
And then I remember when I gradually was able to cook potatoes for whatever the meal was going to be that night. So peel them and fry them or bake them or whatever. So it was a very, very slow process for me. My brother, on the other hand, who was 4.5 years younger than me, did not really have to have any of those responsibilities because it's always the girl who does the household things, and B, he was just a little bit too young to get involved in that. So when I realized that Mom was leaving the house for a few hours a day to earn extra money to help my dad, because you always needed that extra income, as it is today in 2015.
True.
But when I realized that was happening, then I became part of the scene, where I would find excuses after school to run into the shop, because all the ladies would say, oh, here's Gertie's daughter, and my mother's nickname was Gertie, and they'd say, oh, here comes Gertie's daughter, here comes, and they'd talk to me, and I would entertain them as well as them entertaining me, and I guess I was, after them being bent over sewing for maybe 5-6 hours or whatever, all of a sudden this young person is coming in, and it kind of puts a little more life into their day, and so I got to know them as well as they got to know me, and that was a really good thing, because later on I also took on a job, and my job was to deliver newspapers for the Hammonton News. At that time it was the only publishing business in Hammonton, and that was delivered, by the way, once a week on Thursdays. And so after school I would walk to their factory, which I believe was on 2nd Street at the time, with my cloth newspaper bag, and collect maybe 50 newspapers in my cloth bag and put it over my shoulder. So after school, I would, once a week that is, on a Thursday, I would walk in town, which is just a few blocks, to the Hammonton News, which was on 2nd Street, and I would take this cloth bag to school with me on that day, because when I got to the Hammonton News, I would get approximately 50 papers and put them in that cloth bag and then sling it over my shoulder. And you've seen that scene many a times in the Norman Rockwell paintings. And I would walk from the Hammonton News to Kessler's shop, and as soon as I would walk in there to where the location where my mother was, her friends and the employees that were there always excited, wanting to see the paper, and so they'd say, here she comes, looking for the Hammonton News, and the paper was 5 cents at the time. I would go to each and every one of them and give them a newspaper, and they would give me whatever, a nickel, 10 cents, 25 cents, which was my tip. In a very short period of time, I have delivered all of those newspapers right there in the shop. And that was part of my history in the garment industry that I reacted to. And then, of course, I would leave there after I sold the papers and then go out the back door, over to our back door, go in and do whatever orders my mother gave me to have lined up for when she came home. She would be ready to pick up where I left off, and oftentimes that was quickly wash your hands, put on an apron, and get dinner together. So that we always ate together as a family, by the way.
That's a great tradition to keep on. A great family bonding time.
Yes, yes.
So you had a good relationship with your mother.
I had a very good relationship with my mother.
You were working as a team.
Yes. There was time, of course, my mother lived to age 83, so there was a time that you have a rocky relationship with your mother, or one of your parents.
Correct.
But it was never anything so traumatic that it ever destroyed our relationship.
Nothing that you cannot overcome or
No,
fix
no,
or
no,
work on.
no.
Okay, thank you. The next question I'd like to ask you is about your relationship with your friends. Did their mothers also work outside the home?
Yes,
Like-
most of them did.
Okay.
And their positions varied. Some worked in shops, some worked in offices, some cleaned houses.
Okay.
You know, everybody worked. You had to have a second job. And as I said, today, 2015, is no different than what it was in the 50s, well, 40s and 50s, and even the 60s. And that's the way it was. You know, you just did it.
There's no free lunch. You have to work.
Mm-hmm. And as a result, that living in that type of environment and demands from your parents produced a very good work ethic in young people. And because we knew that if we wanted anything, we had to work for it,
Mhm.
and we did.
Yes, you definitely had a good example. And
Yeah. Oh yes, both my parents. My dad, God, he was a workhorse, and my mother never stopped. I mean, and that's the way it was. And they never complained.
No.
There was never any complaints about I'm tired from doing this or I have to do that. They just did it. I can remember seeing my mother if I got up. Because you'd have to go to bed early because of you were in school, but sometimes you get up maybe 11 o'clock at night to go to the bathroom or what have you.
Mhm.
And my mother would be by the ironing board ironing clothes 11:30, 12 o'clock at night ironing clothes.
Finishing her womanly
It
duties.
just never ever stopped.
Okay. So there were clear, defined roles of what
Absolutely.
she had to do.
Yep.
And
It was it was
she
expected
was a
of
good
you.
helper of your dad too.
Yes.
And were your friends mostly Italian, like your cultural heritage, or do you remember if you had known other ethnic groups in your neighborhood?
Oh yes, I did. We actually there was a family across the street from us who were Jewish,
Okay.
and they owned a department store
Okay.
in Hammonton, and that was called Miller's Department Store. Our friendship, not because of ethnic reasons, it was limited because Mr. and Mrs. Miller worked in their store most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
They had one daughter who was in our age group, but she many times was kept to herself because of her parents not being available to govern her play.
Okay. To supervise her in a way?
Yeah. So, but they didn't live there that long.
Oh.
Just a few years. Then they moved to Bellevue Avenue, which at that time was the main avenue in Hammonton.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was around the corner because I lived on Packard Street, so they moved to Bellevue, which was just down the street a little bit and around the corner, and built a lovely home there, and they lived there for a long time until he sold the department store.
Okay.
But, so yes, there was a Jewish family, and let's see, there were an English family there, I believe, German, and Irish, but for the most part, lots of Italians, because the Italians came from Italy to work the garment industry. And Mr. Kessler did a very good job of either he or he would send a representative to Italy, various places in Italy, some on the Adriatic Sea and some on the Mediterranean Sea, to lure these very, very talented tailors to Hammonton to work in his shop.
So he would actually target the people in Italy?
Yes, and oftentimes the father or the husband would come to Hammonton, and Mr. Kessler provided housing for them. Our main street, which was Bellevue Avenue, there were all stores, and the upstairs were made into apartments.
Okay.
And if they didn't have any money, and most of them did not, he would rent a space for them.
Okay.
And they lived up there above these stores, and his clothing factory was walking distance, just a few blocks.
Correct.
So they just would walk to work. They didn't have to have transportation. depending upon their means when they got here, oftentimes he would provide, he would furnish the apartment, even, take care of their meals and their clothes or whatever it was that they needed in order to keep them here, because they were such talented tailors and experts in what they did. And so they started making money, and they liked making money, because where they came from in Italy, they weren't making it.
No.
And so after a period of time, 6 months, a year, maybe longer, maybe less, they would contact their family and they'd say, this is where we want to be. This, we come to America for a better life. I now have this better life. You come here and we'll share it. And then before you know it, the wife would come, or the girlfriend if they hadn't gotten married, their kids, whatever. And they came here to have the better life. And they did have a better life, because many times the wife worked in the factory as well as the husband. And the children received the proper education. Some of them were even sent to private schools, because all of a sudden it could be afforded. And they built lovely homes, and they had a better life. And that's really what it was all about.
And seeing their success motivated them to continue on.
Oh, of course. Now, my grandparents did that on both sides of the family. They came from Italy. My mother's family came from a town called Campobasso, and that family that's on the Adriatic Sea. And they did not work the garment industry. They were an olive oil industry. That's the Calavita olive oil family. That was my mother's side of the family. But my father's side, however, came from Sicily, and they were farmers. So when some of them came, they did get into the garment industry, but most of them stayed with farming, because that's what they knew how to do.
They do.
Those who knew how to sew went into the garment industry. So they had that flexibility here, which they didn't have in their own home country.
Correct. They had more opportunities and possibilities rather than in their own home, where they had to concentrate on one trade, like farming.
The sad thing about that is, though, that my paternal grandparents, when they left Sicily, and they were both quite young, my grandmother and grandfather, they never ever returned home again. So they never saw their parents again.
Wow.
They left at a young age, and they never ever saw them. They couldn't afford to go back to Italy on a vacation.
True.
The next generation that came to America, they were making frequent trips back to Italy to see their families. They were taking vacations and being able to do that. My grandparents, that generation, they couldn't do it. They didn't have the money. They had 8 kids. They came to America. They ended up having 8 kids that they had to feed, clothe, take care of, educate, and do everything that you needed to do. Where are you going to get the money to go back to Italy again?
It's impossible.
So, unfortunately, they never saw their parents again. But that was the way of life.
That's how it was. And you survived. And now
and
you're
they did
here.
Survive.
And now you're here. And I'm
here.
interviewing you. That's great. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. And it's, how do you feel about your mom working outside of your home in times when it was different times back then?
Yes.
So how do you feel now?
Well,
or how did you
I
feel
never
back then?
or now. I never ever felt like I was being neglected, because I was part of it. The mere fact that I was in and out of the Kessler shop whenever I wanted to be, actually. And Mr. Kessler, he always made it a point to come over to me and talk to me and fuss with me, because young kids. And he was just such a wonderful person. And he got to know me over the years, and when I became old enough to, he knew that I would be graduating high school soon, he asked me what I was going to do with my life. And I told him I was going to go to nursing school. So he said, are you going to be able to handle that financially? And I said, no. I said, my parents don't have the money to send me to nursing school, so when I graduate, I'm going to work for a year, and then I'll put myself into nursing school. Because in those days, that's all you had to do was work for a year, and you can go through it.
That was a very
And-
self-determined answer.
Well,
Good job.
You know, and so he said to me, he said, I'll tell you what. He said, you want to go to nursing school? He said, you go right from high school.
Mhm.
Don't worry about having to work.
Mhm.
I will give you whatever money you need. And after you graduate, if you pay me back whenever you want to pay me back. If you can pay me back. If not, he says, don't worry about it. That's how much he thought of my mother.
Wow.
And me also, because I was, he knew me from when I was just a little kid, and he kind of watched me grow up. And I was just so excited about that. And when I went home and I told my dad, my father got very, very upset, because he was a very proud man, and he wasn't going to let anybody, although he respected what Mr. Kessler wanted to do, he just was not going to allow him to do that. So as a result, I graduated from high school. I went to work on a train every day in Camden in RCA, and worked there for a year and earned the money to go to nursing school. So, I did what I had to do. And that was a good lesson, because I learned that if I wanted to survive, or if I wanted to accomplish anything, that you have to do it. That there's really no easy way of doing it. And I never, ever wanted to owe anybody anything. That's how my dad was, and he passed it on to me.
That's good.
And so,
And you learned that from your dad. It's a value. Okay.
Yeah, it was a really, it's a wonderful gift he gave me. He really was.
Do you feel you had to help out more around the house because your mother worked in the clothing factory, or how did that make you feel?
Well, I worked around the house because I think it was, first of all, it's expected of you.
Okay.
Everybody needs to earn their keep. And so it was expected of me. It was also the fact that I was female. And also that my mother did need help, because she did it all. My dad worked 2 jobs. So my mother worked part-time. She ran the house. She took care of my brother and I. She attended every single thing my brother and I ever participated in. And we were always doing something, with the school system. So she would make it a point to be there, because my dad couldn't always be there. He was working 2 jobs.
Right.
There were times where he would, I remember in one day he was going to 3 different places, because the work that he did, everybody was in demand of his particular talents. And so my mother, I don't know how she split herself in all those directions, but she did. And she never complained.
Okay. So you actually, at what age do you remember staying home by yourself with your brother? Do you remember? For the first time?
You know what? We were really, I don't think I could say we were ever alone. We lived in an era when it was everybody trusted everyone. There were no locks on the doors. We were not latchkey kids. I remember going to visit my mother's family in Philadelphia, and we never locked the doors. We would just take our stuff and off we'd go for an overnight or maybe a long weekend to Philadelphia. You never locked the doors. You never had to worry about anybody in any way. So it was not, I guess, I'm going to be guessing if I say maybe I was a very young teenager when that happened.
Right,
but they never really applied to the style that we had, as far as I never really had to watch my brother, but my father would always say to me, take care of your brother, make sure he doesn't get into trouble, make sure he doesn't do this, make sure he doesn't do that, do this for your mother, etc. My father was more demanding than my mother was. And so as a result, I became very protective of my brother.
Okay.
Who, by the way, after he graduated high school, for a short period of time, worked in the garment industry for Mr. Kessler.
Oh, so he did.
So yeah, so he had his taste of it. He was not a sewer. He had a different position there, but he also worked in the garment industry. Of course, my father did not, and I did not.
Okay.
But my mother and my brother.
They had some kind of a tie with the garment factory.
Yeah, they certainly did.
Now, do you remember your mom teaching you how to sew at home or making your own clothes, or did she actually work part-time? Did she ever bring work home to sew at home?
Yes. There were times when she had to have jacket made for someone, a special jacket for a special occasion, and she would take that suit or that jacket, I should say, home. To finish it, so it would be ready to be shipped out the next day. So I do remember that. She would sit by the kitchen window. We had these three, like a bay window, and she would sit there and do that, to finish that job up. She did a lot of mending, because although we always had very nice clothes, they were constantly being maintained.
Okay.
We never threw anything away or gave anything away, unless, of course, they were really on their last leg. My mother did a lot of mending, a lot of repair work. As a result, I do the same.
Okay.
When I was in middle school, in 7th and 8th grade, sewing was a compulsory class, and we had to learn to make various articles. And one of the things that I made when I was, I believe, in 7th grade was a dress, because we had a fashion show. The Girl Scouts had a fashion show, and we all had to make, not only me, but we all had to make our own dresses for that fashion show. I also remember making my 8th grade graduation dress.
You designed it yourself?
No, we had patterns.
Oh, you already had a
We
pattern?
had patterns.
But you actually sewed it yourself?
Yes. And, our sewing teacher, Mrs. Packard, she would we would put the material on the table, and she'd put down these patterns, and we would cut them, and then we'd have to put them together. And I used to have the most difficult time trying to put a pattern together. I don't know what it was. I just couldn't focus.
It's geometry.
It is
That's what it
geometry.
is. Yeah.
And that's a very good point, because I will tell you, in high school, I had both algebra and geometry, and I always got all A's in algebra and struggled with geometry.
It's harder.
So, well, it's a whole different math.
It is.
And that's probably why I always had a hard time putting the pattern together to get the dress. Once you got the dress together, then you had to baste it. Then you had to try it on and make sure that it fit you just right, make the alterations if there needed to be any, and then you were allowed to sew it on the machine, and she would stand over you and you scrutinize, the whole entire operation there. And as a result, I really didn't like it. I didn't like sewing class.
No.
If it had been, for a 7th and an 8th grader, if it had been made more fun, which today it is in the schools that teach it, it is more fun for them. But then it was such a Gestapo procedure.
True. It was like a lot of order. It has to do it precisely. You have to do it precisely.
Yes. And I always associated with that being done by older women.
Okay.
And not by us young people who would rather be playing tennis or
maybe you probably didn't like sewing.
Or something.
You wanted something else. That's why you became a nurse.
No, that's another story there. I became a nurse because my father insisted I had to be a nurse, because if anything ever happened to him and my mother needed to be cared for, I would be able to do that. So I had no choice in that in choosing that. But I'm glad that I did. I did it for 20 years, so it worked quite well. But I do remember some of those things in that sewing class more as a nightmare than a pleasant experience.
That
it was
so funny.
Putting that pattern together that made me crazy. made me crazy. Once I got it together, I was all right, but it was a struggle.
It was. Well, it's okay. That's why we have experiences, so we can learn what's good for us and what we are good at. And
yes.
You definitely, I'm sure you were a good nurse. And do you feel that it's important to preserve the history of women like your mother and what they did?
Absolutely, because they are the past. And without the past, we have no future. And that's as easy as I can make it there.
Okay. And do you feel that industry is still alive nowadays with the same kind of values, or is it
I don't know
changed?
if the values are the same. Of course, the industry is still alive. I don't know if the values have changed. Certainly, we have lost so many artists in fields such as shoemakers, tailors, jewelers. that do their own engraving.
Yes.
You know, now they do it.
The handmade stuff
yes,
it has
yeah.
disappeared. It's more machine operated. It's
everything today.
Technology driven.
Yes, because we don't make anything today to preserve it. We make it to last a certain period of time, and then it has to be discarded. Because if we don't do that, then these companies cannot exist.
Right.
Because we're keeping items for 10, 20, 30, 50 years. And the turnover is not there, so they're not going to be able to survive. So things are purposely made, examples, televisions, stoves, refrigerators, cars. All of these things are made not to last forever.
No.
And
they're easily replaceable and at a price you can afford.
Exactly.
So basically you're saying that in the past it was important, the creativity piece, learning to be creative.
Yes, and it took talent. Today you don't really have to be a talent to do some things. I'm not saying everything, but there are some things you don't really have to be talented for. You know, it's kind of like the robots are excellent examples of what stage we're in today.
Okay.
Because you don't have to think. You know, when I was in the medical field, when I had to examine a specimen under a microscope, you did it. You almost were, well, you did make a diagnosis. And many times you were right because you knew what certain things indicated under that microscope. You don't have to do that today. Today you put a drop of blood in a machine, and the machine takes it around and whips it in through another machine, and a piece of paper comes out with the results on it, and off you go. And you know, and that's the way it is. The old-fashioned times are gone. So I come from that era, obviously, and I see the value of it then, but I'm not ignorant of the fact that today's technology certainly has a lot of advantages also.
Okay.
And it's 6 of one and a half a dozen of the other. You know, they sometimes they cancel each other out, and other times we were better off doing things the way we used to do them, and that versus today is by far that particular thing is superior because we're doing it a certain way today as opposed to the way it was done.
Right.
So it's a boomerang.
It is.
And that's, you know.
There's still innovation, but it definitely it's worth to preserve how it used to be made.
Yeah, because everything has roots.
True.
And, you know, a tree doesn't all of a sudden pop up out of the ground without roots.
True.
So,
I agree with that.
you know, there are things that we need to realize and understand and nurture.
Yes. Now I know for personally yourself, you're very active in the social life and in the whole community of Hammonton.
Yes.
Did you learn this kind of social service values from your mother? Did she give you an example with volunteer service and community service, or?
Well,
was
both
she
my
active?
mother and father always lived with you. You always have to give back.
Okay.
You give back, and we did it, you know, in our church. Excuse me. As well as our community. My mother was a little more limited than my father. My father had a little more flexibility because of the kind of work that he did.
Right.
He was able to incorporate volunteer work more than my mother, because my mother, if she wasn't in the shop, she was in the house or she was tending to my brother and I. So her circle was a little more restricted than my father's. But they both lived with giving back. And I've always done it from when I was a young child because I really knew no other way, you know, volunteer for this, volunteer for that. And it helps you grow. You create, especially when you get older and you continue to do this, you create a wonderful network of friends.
Right. Socialization.
Yeah, you do socialize a lot. I mean, you know, you are productive in whatever organization you're working for, but you also have the opportunity to socialize with people that you probably would have never met under any other circumstances, and it helps you grow as a person.
Your mother created friends through work. That's what we ended up with, meeting people at work. Did they keep these relationships after they retired?
Yes, they did. There was a group of those ladies that would meet once a year for lunch. And they'd go to a local restaurant. And
in Hammonton?
In Hammonton,
Okay.
yes. Actually, it was called, at that time, it was called the Townhouse. And it is now known as Rocco's. And that's on 3rd Street. But they would go there, and they would spend hours there. And they would talk about the old days when they worked in the shop, and they would get caught up on everybody's families and what they did and what they weren't doing, and they always had a really good time. Mm-hmm. And if they were alive today, they'd all be over 100.
Okay.
But I just remember the warmth of those women, because I knew them all, and the way they cared about everything and everybody. And they were talented, and they were productive, they were kind. They were a generation that's kind of sometimes hard to find. And they were all very special people to me. I remember them each vividly. Mm-hmm. And you also, because it's a small town, I not only knew them, but then in school you get to know their kids. And and then you become friends with them, or you have certain things that are very common. You may be on play certain sports together, or be involved in some of the school activities, whatever they may have had at that particular time. Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts, chorus, band, participation in so many activities that the school offered. You found yourself working side by side with the person whose mother was working side by side with my mother. So,
And at what age did your mother retire from the garment industry?
She, I guess, I don't know, maybe in the mid-50s. I'm not really sure about that.
Somewhere in...
Yeah, it might have been the mid-50s.
Before nowadays retirement age, definitely.
Yeah,
it
was right before, quite frankly, I think it was right before Kessler closed. Or went out of business.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I do not know what year that was. I think it was in the 50s. I could be wrong on that.
Now, since you said that Kessler shop actually closed and went out of business, do you find Hammonton nowadays to be missing a piece from its, industrial age where there were so many garment factories? Did it change the town? Do you feel it lost something of it?
I don't know. I don't know about that, because originally, about 150 years ago, when Hammonton originated, we started out with glass, and then we were a glass industry, and then we were a shoe industry, and poultry, and farming, which we still are today. We also had drugs. So that was one of the big industries that Hammonton once had. We are now we now have New Jersey Manufacturing, which is an insurance company, I believe the largest in the state of New Jersey. We're really big in the medical industry here. All of South Jersey is. It's become very, very competitive. We have Atlanticare here in Hammonton. Virtua is down the road. Mm-hmm. There's JFK. And a little further down, there is, of course, Cooper Hospital, and there's Our Lady of Lourdes. So South Jersey's become the mecca of the medical field. And many of the hospitals are moving their satellite offices into New Jersey. They're coming out of Philadelphia, and they're being recognized in the community. And so you will find Jefferson Hospital and the University of Pennsylvania and Hammonton, and quite a few other institutions coming from Philadelphia, crossing over the bridge to become part of South Jersey. And so we have that in Cherry Hill and in Marlton, in Atlantic City, down by Cape May area. So they are spreading themselves over a huge radius.
And I believe Hammonton actually contributed to this whole transformation of the opportunities for different, new trades to be brought, even the medical industry. Because I remember in our pre-conversation, you said that Mr. Kessler was the one that actually invested in the first
Hospital
Kessler's
in Hammonton.
Hospital.
That's correct. We had, and that's why it was named Kessler Hospital. He was at that particular time, which was in the 50s. The Hammonton people said, you know what, we need to have a hospital here, because we are 25 miles from Camden, which was Cooper Hospital. About 25 miles from Atlantic City Hospital, which is now Atlantic Care, and about 20 miles from Vineland, and they had Newcomb Hospital. And so, and you have to keep in mind, if you think of Hammonton as a cruciform, where Hammonton is the center or the hub of that cross, so to speak, because if you go east, you're heading towards Atlantic City. If you go west, you're heading towards Philadelphia, and then you have north, you're going towards New York, and south towards Vineland. We are truly the hub. However, it didn't take them long to realize that when you had a really, really big emergency, time is of the essence, and sometimes you cannot save a life if you have to travel 20 miles or 25 miles. They didn't have medevac then. We didn't have helicopters taking you over to a trauma center. And as a result of that, lives were lost. It didn't take long for the fathers of our community to realize we need to have a hospital here.
And if it wasn't for the people, maybe they would never have invested in that. It was the people that were settled here that needed medical help.
That's right.
And so this is another contribution of these workers.
Exactly. And so Mr. Kessler got on board, and he gave a very, very large donation to get this hospital started. And then I remember I was one of the many, many people who went door to door asking for donations to build the hospital. And Mr. Kessler, being one of the biggest, or perhaps at the time the largest benefactor for the hospital, that's how it took on the name William B. Kessler Memorial Hospital.
William B. Kessler Memorial Hospital?
Yeah, because then he passed, and then it was in his name. But so then that's how we got our little hospital, and that existed for over 50 years, I believe.
And it preserved the life in this town.
Oh yes, it certainly did. And but today the small hospitals no longer exist. The mega hospitals have come in.
Everything is big corporations.
Yeah, it's big. Medicine is a business like everything else.
True, it is. Now, and finally, I just wanted to recap if, did your mother suffer from any medical conditions or any cognitive impairment? Did she have anything that kind of interfered severely with her daily activities later on?
Well, yes. She did. A lot of them I really don't, want to disclose some of her health issues, but it always made me very grateful. My father also had a few health issues, and it always made me grateful that I did or was educated in the medical field, and so that I was able to care for them. And so that was very rewarding.
That is exactly what I was going, because you actually were a nurse, so you kind of were able to.
It was
comfort them.
It was very rewarding. To comfort them, was oftentimes many people can comfort a patient, but I had the ability not only to comfort them but also to take care of them,
to intervene and actually direct
take them to the doctors and be with them at the hospital, and when decisions had to be made on their care, and that's where it really paid off.
Mm-hmm.
So my father had the foresight when I was very young to continually tell me, you've got to be a nurse, you got to be a nurse, you got to be a nurse. And I used to tell him, I don't really want to be a nurse.
Okay.
I want to be in a business field. And they'd say, no, you can't do that, you have to be. So when I was in high school, we were able at that time, they used to have courses called college course, commercial course, and general course.
These were the college type of courses in high school?
No, these were the
High
three
school.
categories in high school. So you chose, if you were going to go to college, you chose the college courses. If you were going to go in business, you chose commercial courses. And if you hadn't made up your mind, or you wanted to be take a vocation of some kind, like maybe be a mechanic, then you took the general courses. So I was always up in the air because I didn't want to get into the medical field, but I was told that I had to. So imagine trying to do that with the kids today. So I split my classes up. I took commercial and college as well, and it afforded me the opportunity that I could be multitask, which I ended up being. So I spent 20 years in the medical field and 20 years in the business field, and I just feel that was one of the greatest gifts that I had, because I was able to accomplish a lot in both of those fields. So I feel that it was a gift, and my father's insistence really paid off, and I bless him for that today.
It is. I believe that was a very good blessing, like you said, because you actually fulfilled your childhood dream of owning a business, and you kind of made your father's dream to see you as a nurse possible. So it was great. And I'm sure that your mother and your father both have been very proud of all your accomplishments, and I'm sure that you learned from them.
I did learn from them.
And from Mr. Kessler, you learned from having owning a business.
Maybe, a very large business.
Yes, maybe you actually, from your viewpoint, seeing all these workers, you thought that you could run this business. So you had a sense of business initiative since young childhood.
Well, I know that was very influential on me. I also had an uncle who loved taking care of books. He was a bookkeeper, and when I was very young, I would watch him take the books, and he had these big ledgers, and they used pencils and not pens, and I could remember the ledgers with all of these columns, and he would be putting these figures, very small numbers, on the ledgers, and it always looked like it was an intricate work, and I just found that very entertaining and amusing, and I would sit and watch him do that. And he ended up having his own business, but so you see and hear a lot of things when you're growing up.
True.
And they get planted in your subconscious, and then as you grow up, you take all those little things that have been planted there,
and you put them together.
And you put them together.
Yeah,
it's the puzzle.
I agree with that.
And you put it together. So, I was around a lot of influential people and things growing up, and I was very fortunate.
Tootin' up like I wasn't wise to the gal with the big blue eyes. Oh, yes, I know. People died of her cook, and I know.
The men who could work worked. My father had a stroke, so he wasn't able to do heavy work.
Oh, wow. Did your mom work?
Well, not in the beginning, because they moved from West Virginia to Philadelphia.
Okay.
Then they moved back to West Virginia. Then they moved back to Philadelphia, and finally in Hammonton, because they had started coming here, my mother had, to help pick berries to make extra money. She was living in Philadelphia. And
because they had all the blueberry farms down here, right?
No. Oh, no, we did not have blueberries back then. That came much later.
Really?
Yeah. No, we did not have blueberries. Strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, and things like that, but no blueberries at that time. The blueberries.
So what year was this?
Way back then, I was born, but we were maybe 7 or so when we used to come to pick on the farms.
Okay.
And go back to Philadelphia. Someone would pick you up on a bus and take you back to Philadelphia. But then she met a person there on the farm who lived in Hammonton, who said to her, look, if you were living here, I could help you to get a job at Kessler's clothing factory. Kessler's was big. You know, the Kessler Hospital, of course, is closed now. But Kessler's was a big manufacturer.
So that was...
They made suits.
Okay, I didn't know that was a factory as well.
Oh, it was a big factory. Gave employment to a lot of people.
Wow.
And these people who came from Italy my mother did hand sewing on the jackets. They're beautiful. They were called Hammonton Park suits. And they were all... I think they were even in the foreign countries they were shipped out.
Wow.
And in any case, as the older people passed away or retired, the younger people did not know how to do that work and didn't care to do it. So they started bringing people in from Italy. A lot of our local residents are here because they went to work at Kessler's and then stayed on, like Franca Girardi, she does, when Kessler's closed, she opened up an alteration. She does alterations. And when Kessler closed, her husband went to work in a department store where the tailors come out to fit men with their suits and stuff like that. So many of the tailors did that.
Yeah.
And then...
So your mother worked there?
My mother worked in Kessler's, but much before the time of this, bringing people in. She was... she was older. And
how long did she work there for?
Well, I don't know how many years, but she used to bring bundles of work home at night.
Oh.
Just to make extra money.
Yeah.
So that's what she did, sewing. And she also used to hand knit sweaters for someone that they worked from home. They worked in the factories. They worked on the farms. And all of us had to work on the farms in the summer.
How old were you when you were working on the farms?
Oh, well, I was in my teens before when we were little, we'd drag around, but we weren't very productive. We used to go with someone would pick us up in a bus and take us to the strawberry farms, and we'd tag along. But as children, we didn't do too much.
So, how old were you when you moved to Hammonton?
I don't know when. I would say about seven or so.
Okay.
Because my father died here in Hammonton, and I was only 8 then. I was about 8 when my father passed.
Oh, wow.
So it was elementary school age.
Okay.
7,
so you lived here for a very long time.
Oh, yeah. I graduated from Hammonton High in 1942. My husband graduated in 1936.
Wow.
He's 95 years old. He was older than me. Anyway, I often say it was depression. None of us had anything to speak of. And nobody was giving us anything either. I mean, there were no handouts. So I said, we didn't even know that we were supposed to be unhappy. We were not. Our parents were good providers. My mother was an excellent cook, as was my mother-in-law. And they would make their own homemade pasta, homemade bread. Everybody had a garden. Everybody preserved everything. If it stood still long enough, they preserved it so that they had a whole winter supply of food in the house.
That's amazing. I wish it was still like that.
Well, I'll tell you, at the time, if we were supposed to be unhappy, we were not, because they would get together as families in the neighborhood on a Sunday and just somebody would bring an accordion and a guitar or have a Victrola, and they'd bring food and enjoy just being together. Everybody worked hard, as I say, and everybody had a garden, and we preserved everything.
Yeah.
We all had to learn how. We all had to help. So we did that. And then in my teens, I packed peaches at a big peach farm.
Oh, cool.
So we did.
Was that here too in Hammonton?
Oh, yeah. Parkhurst. Yep. Hammonton was big farming. When I first married my husband, his father had a farm, and they were doing strawberries and raspberries and even tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that, and peaches, sweet potatoes, and of course local people did the picking. We had no migrant workers then. And eventually when the migrant workers came in, and the state controlled all of everything and you had to pay them so much, it just got so that those smaller crops was not a good thing. So they wound up finally with just sweet potatoes and peaches as major crops. So said we had visited Italy one time, and when my husband, they took him to see their garden or their farm, supposedly, and he said, I can't understand how they could plant anything. It's all rocky, uneven. So
soil's not good, right?
And besides, they were sharecroppers. So as soon as they started coming to Hammonton, and the first ones that came found that the soil was good for farming, a lot of them did come to Hammonton and settle in on farms and start little farms and start with nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing when they got here.
So a lot of people did.
Yeah. It was not unusual then.
No.
And they would just come, and they had no money to speak of. And fortunately, in my father-in-law's case, he had a sister who had married, and they were in Hammonton already. So eventually, he did wind up in Hammonton. And was able to, I don't know whether he rented a small piece of ground that he started on, but he did from the, just a very small piece of property, and developed it. They had 7 children.
Wow.
The children all worked on the farm, needless to say, but every one of them has gotten extended education. So he was big on education, my father-in-law. And he was the most patriotic American. He was so happy to be here, that to be given this opportunity, and he used to tell his children, you're offered this opportunity for a wonderful education, and he was...
You better take it.
Right. So all of them, even the girl is a nurse, only one daughter. She's a nurse.
The rest are all boys?
Well, there was an older girl. One daughter died young. But there were 5 boys.
Wow.
One was a scientist, one a mathematician, and one was in college, then law school, but he then decided to work on the farm, and he did that. So my husband went on to, was in the service. He enlisted at the age of 22 because everybody had to go and serve a year. That was before Pearl Harbor. Everybody had to go and serve 1 year at the age of 18, but they allowed you to finish college. And he had gotten a scholarship to Glassboro State Teachers College.
Okay, and that's Rowan now. Yeah.
And he had prepared to be a history teacher. Certified and all, ready to go. But when he graduated, he was 22, because they did allow you to stay and finish college. And he said, well, instead of finding a job, I'll go enlist for a year, and then I'll come home and find a job.
What branch was he?
Well, he started in, he enlisted. When he enlisted, everybody's in the infantry.
Lucy Curcio. I'm 89 years old. My husband is a World War II veteran, unfortunately now living in the Veterans Home in Vineland. He's 94 years old. He served the war, and I was a bookkeeper and secretary at the Newell Clothing Factory. And the mayor of our town was the owner of the business, and when a man came home for a leave, they would have a big dinner, and he invited Sam to come to the factory to get fitted for an Eisenhower jacket. And this is it. It was manufactured then in May of 45, I believe it was. So he went on into service. He was a major. Then he came home and went to law school. He was in the New Jersey State Assembly. And the way he tells the story, he was responsible for Stockton getting here to South Jersey. So I thought you might all be interested in that. Thank you.
My mom indicated that she was working as a bookkeeper at the Newell Clothing Factory. They were making those Eisenhower jackets on government contract at the time. As you can see from the drab green, that's clearly military uniform. And my dad went to the factory to have his jacket fitted. There he met my mother, and you saw on the board, I believe, that the Newell Clothing Factory was at 7th and Quince in Vineland. And they met there at the clothing factory, had met earlier in Hammonton, which was both of their homes, and they went out for lunch at the from the Newell Clothing Factory to lunch on the street in Vineland, and the rest is history.
We had to work for everything we got. My mother said, you can have it if you earn it. You don't earn it, you don't get it.
Right.
That was their philosophy, and like I said, I've been working a long time, and it doesn't bother me. I like to work. I do. I said if I could find a job today, I'd go. I would go work, but there's no sewing places around. They done away with them. Everything is overseas, so that's why I ain't working. I mean, I sew at home, but I sew for my family, and I don't get paid. Everything I've done as charity. They wanted it, I did it, because I like to do it. That's just the way it was. I mean, I'm not in business, but I do it to keep me busy.
I know someone who would pay you to make them a certain jacket.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I talked about you to him. He's my boyfriend.
Oh.
And there's this coat, and it got worn out, but he loves this coat. It's green, kind of army-ish. I don't know how to describe it much, but he's been trying to look everywhere for this coat. And he heard about you and how you're so good at making coats, you can do it in hours. He was like,
oh, no,
I
can't do it in an hour.
Oh.
No, it takes a little longer than that.
Okay. But, yeah, I mentioned you to him. He's like, I'll pay her money to make me a new coat.
No, well, I'd have to see it. What I mean? I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know the newer styles. But if he has a jacket, I could take it apart and use that as a pattern. Yeah, well, I'd have to see it, you know what I mean? If it's a man's tailor jacket, no. If it's a regular, like a sport jacket, is it a sport jacket?
Yeah, it's a casual jacket.
That's different. But when you do a man's jacket, that's what they're talking about, Kessler's. That was all hand sewing. A lot of hand sewing went into that. Where what I did was a lot of machine sewing, but then there were hand sewing, but not as much.
Okay.
So that's what I was trying, to descend to. And the same thing with the paycheck. I got a paycheck at that price because I only worked on the floor, what they used to call floor girls. We would get collars ready. We would get their fronts, and we would mark the pockets, so that when we gave that work to the girl, she would have pockets to make. And if they had flaps, we would have to turn the flaps. We would have to turn the belts. That's what I first did when I got there. I had to turn belts. And we made little girls' coats at that time. And that was at 2nd and Kane Avenue, Louis Seichicks. I don't know how to spell that. My daughter asked me, and I said, don't ask me. I said, because I don't know. When I went, my sister was there, and she got me the job. So, and then downstairs they had, at that time, the little girls' coats had little fur collars, but they were rabbit.
Oh.
Yeah, they were not real fur. But that's where she worked, downstairs. And when she heard they needed somebody upstairs, that's how I got in there. And she came and got me, and I got a job in there.
And you were 13?
I was 13, but I lied and said I was 15.
Nice.
Because, they wouldn't hire you that young. But when I said 15, and my sister vouched for me, but I had to go to school one day a week, which they called continuation school at that time. It was not regular school. You went to school one day a week till you were 16, and then you didn't have to go to school no more.
Oh, wow.
You couldn't just quit school. And so I got the job, and I went to school for one day a week till I was 16, and I didn't have to worry about it anymore. I wanted the job, and I got it, and I liked it. And that's the way I started. And I started on the floor, and they used to call them floor girls.
Okay.
Now the men do it. The girls don't do it no more because they carry bigger bundles. And when we were working, see how these tables are together?
Yeah.
There's a machine there and a machine here, and they work together. They would face to one another, but they didn't do the same job.
Okay.
And that's the way. And they'd have a whole row of girls, and your operation was whatever you had to do. In other words, the coat got made. You had a front, you had a back, you had sleeves, you had collars, and every girl had one thing to do, and they did that continuously. But as a floor girl, you would take one part of the coat and give it to one girl who did one thing to it. Then you would pass it to the next girl who would put the collar on. And then you'd pass it to the next girl who would put the sleeve in. So by the time it got to the end of the line, that coat was put together. It wasn't complete, but it was put together, and then it went on to the girls that made the lining. Girls made linings just like we made the part to the coat, and then there would be another bunch of girls would put the lining to the coat. But in the meantime, all those little pieces got taken to the pressers, and they would press all the inside seams. So when the coat was almost complete and they did the finish pressing, they didn't have to go inside and press seams. They were all done as we went along. It was like, you had to know what you were doing.
Yeah.
And that's what got me interested in sewing. If they could put that together, I could do that too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I liked it. I mean, you worked hard. You had to take your collars. If a girl finished her collars, you take them to the presser and you put them on his bench. And when he'd get done pressing them, if you go back, it would be like a free-for-all. This girl got there first. She wanted hers done first, and you would have to wait till he pressed them. Then you'd go back and you bring them back, and the girl would put them in the collars. And then they would go to the hand sewers, and they would finish putting the shoulder pads in and finish the hems and tack them. And then they'd go back to the top pressers who would steam it and get ready to ship. And that was a whole complete operation. And, I mean, it was interesting, but it was hard. I mean, it wasn't easy. It sounds easy, but it wasn't easy.
Before last week, I had never heard of piecework. What floor girls did, was that considered piecework?
No, floor girls
that's
were
what
not.
I wanted to understand.
No, floor girls were not piecework.
Okay.
Floor girls were just considered girls that work and give everybody a...
Right.
And if you did, let me tell you something, if one girl was done and you didn't have her bundle ready, she would, oh my God, you would have to move because they would get irritated because they worked on piecework. So if you got a bundle of, say, 7, and you had to do them, when I started, I got 2 cents a seam. Do you know how many coats I had to do to make money at the end of the day? So you have so much a seam. So if you don't have the other part to this seam, you're sitting waiting. You're wasting time. And those girls, I'll tell you, those girls would get pretty nasty.
Wow.
And that's the way it was. I mean, every operation had a price tag. That would be the designer and the owner of the factory would decide that. So he could figure how much to pay a seam so that he could come out with a profit. And then that's when they would start. The cutter would lay up the material, and then it would go from one step to the other until the coat was done. And if we didn't get them done within a certain time, he didn't make the money either. And they would be shipped to different stores. I knew they were shipping to Penny's, Lane Bryant, all of them. And they used to do the same coat, but different colors to different stores. So it would look like it was a different coat. That was one of the tricks of the trade.
Nice.
I mean, they would, if you like that coat and say, well, I'll give it to you, but you can only have it in such and such a color. That was fine. So then we would put a Lane Bryant label in it, or we put a Penny's label in it. That's why I say people who buy labels, they're out of their minds. I mean, it's prestigious, yes, but if you've got a little know-how and when you shop around, you can get something as close to, you know. Of course, I know you shop. So, or does your mom shop for you?
Oh no. I get deals, you know, when I can afford to buy anything.
Oh,
so.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's great. So we never got deals. We had to work for everything, and as I said, I had to. But I really liked it, and I was fortunate because my boss, he was an operator. He worked too. That whole line would work. And one of the girls got married and went on a honeymoon for 2 weeks. And I think he knew that I was interested because I didn't miss a trick. And he said to me, "Would you like to try it?" I said, "Oh yeah, I'll try it." But I was scared to death because, you know, those power machines are fast. Oh yeah, very fast. I got one home. I bought one because I couldn't sew on them little machines. I had 2 of them. In fact, I got 2 home that I'm going to give away. I can't handle them. They're just too slow. So I said, yeah, I'll try it. And he showed me how to handle it, and he said, just don't go fast. Because if you push that pedal fast, it's like driving a car. When you first drive, you know how you jerk the car and the car goes fast, and you learn to control the pedal?
Right.
That's the same thing with the sewing. So I got done, and she came back in 2 weeks. He found a place for me to make belts, and I made the belts. And they were little tiny things for little girls. And they used to put them on the back of the little coat. And then he committed suicide, and that was the end of my job there.
Oh.
The whole place had closed, and everybody was sick over that.
That was before the war?
Excuse me?
That was before the war?
Yes, that was all before the war. It was just before the war. And after that, I didn't have a job for a while. Then the war came along, and then I went out of sewing. I worked for RCA for a little while, and I worked packing rifles. And it was such a secret. It was for the government. Don't ask me what the name of the place was, because I couldn't tell you. No, they wouldn't. It was hush hush.
Okay.
It was. I know where it was. I mean, I could go there now. It was on 6th and Jefferson in Camden. But there was a railroad track that ran across, in between that and a junkyard across the street. And they worked in here putting the guns together. And then I was across the street stenciling the guns, and they used to put them on freight cars and ship them out, and nobody knew what was in them. That was a secret. You know, it was a government secret.
Wow.
And that's where I worked. I worked there for a little while. I was stenciling boxes. They were on a skid.
Yeah.
And I'm going down like this, and there was a great big mouse down there in the junkyard. I tell you, it scared me. I screamed. I threw everything in the air, and I ran across the street. It was terrible. And there was a young fellow who was hurt in the war, but he was in Pearl Harbor at the time, and he had a hook hand. He came back, and he was working with us. George White, I'll never forget him. He come running after me. He thought there were 3 black men working, putting them on the freight. He thought maybe they did something to me, because I used to stencil them. He would count them, and then he would make the guys put them on it. But he didn't see me. I worked with that thing. My family got the biggest charge. I said, I don't think it's funny. I could see that down right today in a junkyard, you know.
Aww.
And that was it. And I went and worked with my brother in the train station. He had a newsstand at Suburban Train Station. That Suburban Train Station is still there over in Philadelphia, 15th and Filbert.
Okay.
And because he had men work for him, but they all were in the service, and he was stuck, and it was his stand. So he asked me if I'd go there, and I was making more money, you know, where I was, and he said, I'll match it. So I went and worked with him till the boys came home from the service. Then I went back to sewing. And then I went to that Henry Pearl. And that was back in Camden again. And I applied for that job, and I got it. I went in and I asked them, they asked me how much I said, I've been working. I said, fine, come on. I started right away. I didn't even go home. And I worked for them many years. We were in Camden for the longest time, and we were on that same railroad track, but about 3 or 4 blocks down. Okay. And the place got too small, and when the trains went by, it interfered with the sewing machines. So he bought the place in Burlington, and that's when they called it the Burlington Coat Factory, but it was Modecraft was the real name of it.
Modecraft?
Mode, M-O-D-E, Craft. That was the name of the factory. But when we moved to Burlington, they always said Burlington Coats, but it wasn't Burlington Coats till after Henry Pearl left.
Okay.
I worked there for, oh God, I wasn't married when I started there. It was right after the war, and then I stayed there till I got married. I got married in 49, and I went back to work, and I worked till I got pregnant with my son, and I left in 51. I was pregnant. And I would have worked, but you couldn't collect, they wouldn't give you your unemployment if you were pregnant. Oh. No, back then they wouldn't give it to you. So your camouflage didn't try to work until you started the show, because once you start the show, they wouldn't give it to you. They didn't know whether you were pregnant or not. You just say you were a little fat girl, you know? But that didn't always work. Yeah. And then I was home until my children got in high school, and then my son wanted to go to law school, and my daughter wanted to go to college, but she didn't know what she wanted to do. And of course, I was fortunate. My husband had a good job. He was a sheet metal worker, and he had for that time, he had a good job, but it wasn't enough to put 2 kids through college, so I went back to work. After they were, my son was a junior and my daughter was a freshman in Camden Catholic, and I went back to school. I went back to work. And I worked until they got out of college, because we asked for aid when they were both in. They were both in 2.5 years together. Boy, that was hard back then. And they said, no, you make too much money. My husband says, I make too much money? You gotta be kidding. If I made that much money, I wouldn't ask for it. So that's why I went back to work. And then I stayed home for a while, and then I got antsy, and I said, oh, I gotta find something to do. Of course, then I was doing a lot of sewing at home for myself, my kids. My daughter never bought a coat till she was in high school. I have never bought a good dress. I make them all for myself. My kids, when they were small, I made all their little dresses. I was going to bring my album. My grandson, 2 years ago, said to me, Graham, why didn't you cut pictures? I said, I didn't think of pictures. That's one thing I never did think of. So they managed to get some together, and on my 85th birthday, they made me an album of some of the things I made. And my wedding dress, I made 4 wedding dresses. I altered, I don't know how many wedding dresses. And all my dresses, all my coats, they're all, I mean, I like to do it, that's it. And now I wanted to go back, and I was reading the paper. I said to my husband, I got to go find a job. He says, you got enough to do. I said, nope. The kids were in college. I said, I got to find something. So one day I'm reading the one ads, and I see an ad, and I said to my husband, you know what? I'm sewing almost 40 years, and I ain't never seen an ad like this. Operator wanted, power machine, we will teach. I said to my husband, that's crazy. I don't know who put a thing like that. They don't teach you. You either learn from somebody, or, you know, a factory never teaches you. If you have a little bit of knowledge, that's okay. They'll give you a break. But they just take you because you can catch your fingers in them things real fast. I already did, got a needle through my finger. So anyway, I answered that ad. And I answered it because it was close to home. So you know Cuthbert Road? The building is still there. They only make the casings now. They don't make the parachute no more. So I went and I answered the ad. The fellow that answered it, in fact, I always said I was going to stop in and see if he's still there. I don't know if he's still there. And he said, did I know how to run the machine? I said, yeah. I said, I know how to run the machine. He said to me, how much experience you got? Well, at that time, it was 35 years, I think, something like that. He jumped up and left me. What the heck did I do? And I'm sitting there, and I have no idea what they're doing in this place. None. I'm in this room all by myself. They got pictures on. I mean, it was a nice room, but there was nobody there. I said, I never answered an ad where somebody walked out and left me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he was gone for a while. And then when he came back, he had another man with him. This other man says to me, I hear you have 35 years experience. I said, yes, I do. And then he starts telling me, well, we make something and we need people who have some knowledge. We're not open yet, but we're trying to get started. And he's going on and on and on. I don't know if I'm hired. I don't know what he does. And I don't know. And I'm looking at him and I'm a little bewildered. I don't see anything. Usually when you go in a place, they usually have a picture of something that they're going to be making. So he said to me, oh, by the way, you're hired. Don't go look for another job. And I looked at him. I said, what am I hired for? He said, well, you said you sew. I said, I do, but I don't see anything around here. We show parachutes, but I almost died. I said, I never sewed a parachute. He said, well, if you got 35 years experience, you can do it. He said, now give me 2 weeks because we're setting up a building. And so I went. I sat down, and they were showing me how to put these together. And I looked at him, and I said, okay. Showed me. And, of course, after you know what they're trying to tell you, you could do it on your own. So I just took, and I whizzed right through one panel, and they look like this. Well, how fast did you do that? I said, it wasn't fast. I said, that was just what I do. And they both started to laugh. He was a man from Hungary, nice man. And the other guy was from Texas. He said they were trying to make this parachute on a treadle machine in the basement, the two of them, and they never sewed. So it was an experience, and I got the job, and I was a forelady. I was the big wheel. I showed everybody else how to sew.
How long did that go on for?
Until my husband passed away. Then I had to retire. I was 60 by then. But I loved it. And I'm going to tell you something. That was not union. And those people were the nicest. I tell you, Henry Pearl was an ace. But they gave me 6 sick leave paid days a year. I never, in all my years of sewing, got a paid sick day. Never, with a union or not union. Wow. And the first 6 months I was there, it happened to fall with their vacation time. I got 2 weeks vacation. I tell you, I was flabbergasted. I said, oh my God. And I told her, I says, I'm not here a year. She says, you don't have to be here a year. And of course, I trained other girls. And then there were other departments that then when I got the first parachute together, they took us out here to Medford. There's a Flying Nace, I think, airport. And we went out there and they were going to try the parachute. You never saw somebody so scared in their life as I was. I said, you can't put a man up there. They said, we know that that's going to fly. What what they do is after you sew it, it goes on and gets another operation. But they put it on a light table, what they call a light table.
Okay.
And they pull the chute over it, and there's a girl who examines all the seams, and they could see if there's a stitch missing, and if there is, that chute don't go up because it'll get air in it and it'll explode up in the air.
Yeah.
So you're taking somebody's life. So when they said they were going to go up there, I was scared to death. I said, "Oh my God!" They said, "Don't worry, we checked it out. It's fine." So when my husband was home at that time, he was on in between jobs, and I said, "Could he come out too?" He said, "Sure." Do you know he came out and got a parachute on and went up with them, but he didn't jump, but he went up with them guys in the airplane, and when they jumped, I'm telling you, I was scared to death. My hands were sweating, and those clowns, they come out and they're making all kind of motions. They were 3 young fellas, but they were great kids. They really were, but they loved to fly, and they went up there and they came down. I tell you, I couldn't wait till they came down. When they came down, they all came over and hugged me because they knew I was scared to death. I loved working there. I really did. And I hired, and I didn't fire anybody, but I had the ability to do that. But I had a nice crew of ladies, and they all worked. Everybody had a different operation to do, and I learned another skill. I learned how to put a parachute together. But those things, after you make so much of them, and then they go to another department, they have to be, the fella has to put his own parachute. Nobody packs a parachute but the man who's going to use it.
Okay.
And you hear that somebody has an accident in a parachute, that was either their mistake or if they have somebody pack it. But whoever packs it has to sign the chute because you're taking your life. And many of the Navy and the Army parachutes we repaired. The Army guys used to bring them in. We used to fix them. That was very interesting, but they left and went back to Hungary. He didn't want to stay here anymore. But it was interesting.
Yeah, that
so
sounds
now I understand that they only making the harnesses over there now. I don't think they're not making parachutes, they're making the harness. I've been out of there since my husband died. And when my husband died, I had never collected any of my sick days. I never missed a day. Do you know they gave me all my sick days from when I was there? They brought me a check every week, and I was telling them, I don't deserve a check. I don't have anything coming to me. You gave me all my... No, these are your accumulated sick days, which... very nice. And that was Paraflight. That was the name of the company. Paraflite. They were great. And that was my last actually sewing till then I went and lived with my daughter. And then after the kids, she had 3 children and she was working. So when they got school age, I went to Hammonton and got a job for a couple years. That was it. At that time, I was in my 70s. And that was it. The factory closed, and that was... But I sewed all the time. And like I said, most of those people that sew, I'd say 20% of them do their own sewing. Don't do any you know what I mean?
They don't do their own sewing at home themselves?
No. Most of them just did it for a paycheck. And if you do this day in and day out for 20 years, you get pretty fast and you make a good bit of money. The only thing is, if you're smart enough, you never went over a certain amount of money, as I did. Because if you went over a certain amount of money, they figured out she can do this faster, so she doesn't need that. We can take a 0.5 cent a seam away from her. So I would make it, but I wouldn't turn it in. I would drag it out. So some days when you don't feel good and you can't work as fast, then I would use it. That's what I'm saying. You had to learn these tricks, and I started young, and I made sure I paid attention. One old lady said to me, "You watch and you listen." And when she told me that, I didn't know what she was talking about. Well, you watch and you listen. And well, you know what? I wasn't there too long when I started to realize if I don't start to listen and watch, I won't know what I'm doing, because they never sat down and gave you lessons. Who gave you lessons? That was my one thing that I really missed, that I didn't go and further that. I wanted to go. When I was looking into that, you went to school and they only taught you sewing and designing. And that course was $500. I didn't have no $500. And it was not part of the college curriculum. It was just that. They taught you that. And a lady friend of mine, she went. She wanted me to go with her, and I said, I can't afford it. And my older brother was married, and he said to me, babe, I'll give it to you, and then you pay me back. And I said to him, oh, I can't do that. How am I ever going to pay you back? I only make $12 a week, and I got to give Mom $11. And he started to laugh. He says, no, you could take your time and give it back to me. And that's the one thing I really regret I didn't do. I could have gone there. Maybe, who knows, I could have had my own business, because that other girl, Brad, did. Yeah. She went 2 years. She had her own business. She sewed wedding gowns, draperies, everything. I said that was my one mistake that I didn't do.
But you do great.
Yeah, I know, but I could have done better. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I like to see if I could look at something and say, I could do that. I could do that. But then it's harder for me to figure out how to do it. I'll do it. I have done it. I have gone to Cherry Hill Mall and looked at when there was a couple expensive dress shops there. Mm-hmm. I'd take my husband with me and I'd say, you draw me a picture of that. And I'd go home and I figured out between him and I, he was a sheet metal designer. He had a degree in making patterns in sheet metal. So he was a big help to me.
He can draw really well.
He would draw it, and then one Sunday morning we were in there. We got out of church. We go to 7:30 Mass. He'd come out of church, and I'd say, let's go. Well, when my daughter got married, I made her gown, and then I wanted a dress for myself. And I had seen one in there I liked, and I said to him, come on over there, let's draw that picture. And he said to me, you're going to make me go to jail. He said, I ain't allowed to do that. I said, yes, you are. Nobody knows what you're doing. And we copied a dress, and of course I had it in that album that I was going to bring today, but I didn't. And so that's, I made her wedding dress. And I made my wedding dress, which was, of course, now it wouldn't look up to what the girls are wearing today, but that was 65 years ago. And I made my girls' dresses. Got down on the living room floor, didn't have a place to cut it on the living room floor in my mother's house. I had no table to cut. Now I have a platform. I don't know what, but that's all it was. I don't know what else I could tell you.
So your daughter's name is Maria, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is your son's name?
Thomas.
Thomas?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He lives in Arizona.
No cold weather for him, huh?
Oh, he got stuck in Dayton, Ohio in a snowstorm for 7 hours.
Oh.
And he came home and said, that's not going to happen again. Well, I was not happy that he was going, and then my husband said, look, he's got to go. If he stays here and he don't make out, then we're going to be to blame. He's got to go. He went, he loved it, and he's been there ever since. Well, now he's a judge, so, I mean, he's...
wow.
And his daughter is a professor. She teaches communications. And the other daughter is going for her master's at ASU, and she is the head coach of sand volleyball in ASU. So I'm fortunate. I have 5 grandchildren, and all of them did well. My son is an engineer up at college up in New York. Let me think. I can think of it. Every once in a while I lose it. Cornell.
Oh, wow.
He's up there in Cornell. He does all the construction, runs all the construction work up there. Then the other 2 are in computers. So I have 3 great-grandchildren. I never thought I'd live to see them. My poor husband didn't get to see anything. He passed away. He was only 62 years old. He was 4 months. He was sick, here and gone. And if you'd have seen him, he was the picture of health. But he had lung cancer. Yeah. He had the worst kind you could get. Oat cell, they call it.
Okay.
Oats, like mother's oats. And the doctor told me he's going to make a recovery, and then the bottom's going to drop out. And that's exactly what happened. You're not going to put that in there, are you?
No, I didn't put all of it. No.
So that was it. He died in 1984. It's 30 years now.
But it sounds like you guys were quite the team.
Oh, we were. No, we were. I had a wonderful husband. I was fortunate, let's put it that way.
Okay.
I had a good husband, and my children talk about him every day. See, he was just a good person. I mean, they went and did things that half the kids in their area didn't do. My husband worked all year, and he had money taken out of his paycheck so that we could have a vacation. We had just moved into this house in Pennsauken, and he came home and he says, well, we have $1,000. I almost died. $1,000, that's a lot of money. I said to him, well, you know what, give me $500 and then we'll spend $500. He said, no way. And I was upset because he never turned me down on anything I wanted. He said to me, no way. He said, I need a vacation, you need a vacation, and the kids got to get away. We are going away. We go away, and you want to buy something, I'll give you the money, you buy it. But you're not buying no furniture. You'll get your furniture. That's what he did. We used to go away. My kids were on cruises when nobody else knew of a cruise. And they have good memories with him. I mean, he took us to nice restaurants. But all week, we didn't go anywhere. That's what he said. I work all year to wait, and I want to go away, we're going away. And we did. We went all over. It's good because if we didn't, he died so young, you know, right after my kids got married, he died. Because he'd say, well, we'll do things together. Well, guess what? We didn't do anything, just the 2 of us, because he, you know, he passed away. But we did them while the kids were living, and I'm glad we did, because I wouldn't have had no memories. But we do go to work every day, come home. That's just the way he was. He said, no, we'll do it. And we did. We started out at the beach, and I didn't like the beach, but he liked the beach, and the kids, he said, they're still small. We'll go to the beach. And he had an aunt who ran a boarding house in Wildwood.
Okay.
And we used to rent a couple of rooms for a week there. And she used to cook for us. And then nights when she didn't cook for us, we'd go to the restaurant. We'd see what she was making. If we liked it, we'd stay. If not, we'd go to the restaurant. That was it. And then as soon as the kids got they were able to maneuver themselves, we're going away. And we used to go away all the time. We didn't stay in the area after that. So it was good. It was good. He didn't... He seen the oldest grandson. He saw the other 2, but he didn't remember them. He wouldn't remember them. They don't remember him. They only know pictures of him. But my oldest grandson, he was 10. So he remembers him. He was his namesake. He was. So.
What was your husband's name?
Thomas.
Oh, the namesake. Okay.
Thomas. He was Thomas.
Okay.
And my
My daughter's Maria because my husband said to me I wanted to name her Roxanne. And when she was born, she had a head of black hair just like mine, and my hair was black. That's a bottle now. And when he saw her, he said, "She's no Roxanne. She's a Maria." I said, "Oh, no." He said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Roxanne's are blondes." He said, "She is not blonde." So she got Maria. He named her, I named my son, so it was all right. But her middle name's Roxanne. She took Roxanne. We gave her Roxanne a middle name.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any nicknames for your kids? No?
Nope. Tom. My husband had a nickname, Bud.
Bud?
I called him Bud, yeah. Well, his dad called him. His dad was a city detective, and he passed away.
Okay.
The Scarduzias at the time my husband was living, they were all policemen, detectives, lawyers. They came from the other end of Camden, and they were all in the law enforcement. They all were. I didn't know my father-in-law. He died in March, and I met my husband that year in May, so I never knew him. But my husband said, couldn't fool him. He said, we try to sneak something on him. He said, "You ain't kidding me. I know exactly what you're doing." So that was it. That was what we did. And as I said, I've been living with my daughter for 30 years. That poor kid, she's had me longer than I had her.
I have a question for you. You mentioned that you could hurt yourself on the needles when you're doing your work on the machine. What would happen to a woman if she hurt herself on the job? Would they do anything for her? Was there compensation?
Well, you didn't get compensation. You got taken to the hospital, and that was it.
Okay.
There was no, there was none of that. I mean, they started with the union, and truthfully, between you and me, don't you put that in there, they were as crooked as they come. I will be honest with you. That you paid dues, but it was many years before they were ever able to give you anything. I assume that was because they had to wait till they had so much money. I don't know. But I know the men's union, the amalgamated, I even said that in there, they made good money. They got paid good money all the time because their work was different. It was more prestigious, and most of them were men. And they got paid more. In the ladies' garment union, they started that union in 1939. Then you started to pay, I know it's $2 a month. What were you going to get for $2 a month? Then they started to cut down the hours because we sometimes had to work 48 hours and I got the same amount of money. The girls who were piecework, they got more because they worked harder and they got paid more. But the union dues was the same for them and for us. So it was tough. And let's see, now, all the years I worked, I didn't collect one penny from them. I always got some kind of excuse. When I left to have my children, I paid my dues while I was out because I knew that I would be entitled to something. Then when Henry Pearl closed, my union dues wasn't paid. They always said, well, when you come back to work, you can pick it up. Well, I came back to work, and then they try to tell me, oh, well, you were out too long. Well, we can't take you. You have to start as a new member. So I had to start as a new member. So when I went out, I asked what I was entitled to, because some of them got money every month after they retired. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't like some places. And they said, oh, you didn't work that many. I says, I didn't work what? You didn't work that many years. You were out. I said, yeah, but I came back and I paid my union dues. I said, you made me start as a new, I didn't get nothing. And as you worked, when you worked during the year, we never got a a full week paid. That's why I said that other place, when I got a week's vacation, I almost died. You got a percentage of what you made. You never knew what you were going to get for vacation because it was what you made, and they had all the records. I mean, when you made piecework, you kept it for a week. You checked your check. If it wasn't right, then you went in and you complained. But at the end of the year, who would keep all them records back then? You wouldn't keep them because the coats are out. Nobody knows. You know, the coat has a number. So that's all it is. You write down. I have a sheet yet from Moatcraft where we used to put our work down. I have a tablet I kept from them. And you got a percentage of what you earned that year. And it was never a full week. It never came out to a full week's. And that was so discouraging, you know what I mean? That's what you got. I didn't, when I was on the floor, I got nothing. But then when I was a pieceworker, I did get, but it was never a full week pay. So that union was as crooked as they come. They were slick, and the way they did it, you know, there was no way you could argue with them. But, you know, the only place I argued, I worked over in Philadelphia for a while. I didn't even put that in there because I wasn't there that long. I was on unemployment, and back in them days, if they sent you to a job, you had to go. And if you refused that job, you didn't get unemployment. So I went over to this place in Philadelphia. Although there were some people there I had worked with in Camden, and I knew them. It was a nice place to work. Don't get me wrong. It was very nice. It was small. I don't think there were 100 people. We made very expensive coats there. Nice people to work for. And one of the girls that was in the office in one of these shops worked in the office there. And I was, you know, kind of knew it. Some of the prices they were giving me, I was marking it down, and I was marking how much I made. And then I'd get my check, and I'd look at it, and I'd say, oh, no, did I make a mistake? There was always a discrepancy of $3, $4. Yeah, $3 or $4, you know. So one day I said to my husband, hey, babe, check out my check, will you? It doesn't seem to add up to me. He said, why, could you count it? I said, no, I couldn't count it. We kid one another. I said, yeah, I couldn't count it. I don't know. I guess I couldn't add this or that and make a joke out of it. So he added it, and he came up with the same thing I did. He says, you're short. I said, well, I'm glad you noticed it because I noticed it. And I said, now, this is the second or third week I noticed this. So he said, well, why don't you go in and ask about it? I said, yeah, I will now for sure. I said, you know, I'd give it a quick glance, and I said, oh, well, you know, and I wouldn't look. But when I started to get 3 or 4, I said, yeah, something's wrong here. So when I went down into the office, there was a girl there who used to work in Henry Pearl's office. And I knew her, you know, and I said to her, you know, there's something wrong with my check. And she looked at me, she says, really? And she had a grin on her face. I says, yeah. She said, oh, Mary, did you just notice that? I says, no, I didn't just notice it. I noticed it a couple of weeks ago, but I thought it was me. I said, she said, and then she's going, well, you know, and she's him-hawing around for some reason. Then I finally said to her, come on now, what's going on? And she told me that the boss's son, Davy, a nice-looking man, in fact, a handsome man, and his 2 grown sons worked there, too. He was having an affair with a Spanish girl in there, and we were supplying the money. I said, really? Goodbye. That's it. You ain't getting no more of my money. And that's what went on. And it took me 4 weeks or more to notice it. I mean, I noticed it the first time. I figured, well, you know, it could be an addition error. Then the second week again. I ignored it. But then in the third and fourth week, it got a little more money because I made more money. I thought, this is not right. And I thought, well, maybe my addition is wrong. You know what I mean? Because piecework, they give you 2.5 cents, some of them 2 cents. And I figured, well, you know, a half a cent, that adds up. And maybe I didn't calculate it right. That's why I said, finally, I said, no, there's got to be something wrong here. So that's when I made my husband do it. And he said, no, I was short about $7. $7 back then was a lot of money. You figured if we were 50 girls and he got $7 or more out of every girl. See, this way his wife didn't know he was doing this. His father was a wonderful man. His father run the shop. His father never got that caught on to that either. Because the girls all liked him. They made good money. They never said nothing. I said, no way. He's not getting my money.
perfume rare, and I'll be on my way. Stick some slick'em on my hair, I may be gone all day. 'Cause I'm riding for a fall, tootin' up in my shirts and ties for the gal with the big blue eyes. Oh, I'm riding for a fall, tootin' up in my two-tone shoes for the gal with the baby blues.
Oh, yes, I know. She's a dangerous critter, I know. She's a dangerous critter, I know. She's a dangerous critter, I know.
But I can't quit her, I'm riding for a fall, tootin' up like I wasn't wise to the gal with the big blue eyes.
Oh, yes, I know. She's a witch of a woman, I know. She's a witch of a woman, I know. She's a witch of a woman, I know.
But I'm so human, I'm riding for a fall, tootin' up like I wasn't wise to the gal with the big blue eyes.
Oh, yes, I know. People died of her cooking, I know. People died of her cooking, I know. People died of her cooking, I know.
She's so good looking, I'm